birth fatally fell from the fifth-floor balcony at the Robert Mangaliso Hospital in Kimberley. It's still not clear whether the woman committed suicide or was pushed, but police have confirmed that they've opened an inquest. Provincial Health spokesperson Lebohang Majaha says the hospital staff who were present during the incident will receive counselling.
As the Northern Cape Department of Health, we are saddened to have learned about a tragic incident yesterday involving a 22-year-old lady who succumbed due to injuries sustained after falling from the fifth-floor balcony at the Robert Mangaliso Hospital in Kimberley. The patient was admitted at the hospital after giving birth and referred to from one of our nearest medical facilities in the province for further treatment and care on the 14th of January. The baby is currently in the care of the hospital and will be reunited back with the family soon.
And finally, TikTok has resumed services to its 170 million users in the US after President-elect Donald Trump said he would give the app a reprieve when he takes office today. The Chinese-owned app stopped working for American users on Sunday following concerns that the data could be accessed by Chinese officials. In a statement, TikTok later said it was in the process of restoring services just hours after going dark in America. It thanked the president-elect for providing the necessary clarity and assurance and said they would work with Trump on a long-term solution that keeps TikTok in the United States. Recapping the top story, International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola says Pretoria has welcomed the ceasefire agreement signed by Israel and Hamas to bring an end to a 15-month-old war that has devastated the Gaza Strip. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We start top end of KZN with some truck crash delays holding traffic on the John Ross Highway. This crash just before the Foscor traffic lights. So if you're driving from Mpangeni in towards Richards Bay, you may well find that section of roadway blocked. There are certainly delays and you might need to just divert around that one. Also, busy coming out of Pietermaritzburg, the N3 down to Market Road, looking slower than normal. And driving into Cape Town, there's a backlog already on the N2. That is coming into Khayelitsha with a crash between Spine Road and Meway, and that traffic queue getting back towards the Baden-Powell Drive exit, just off the highway, but staying in that area. Mitchell's Plain, very busy already through the roadworks from AZ Berman up to the R300 and the M7 queuing heavily coming out of Mitchell's Plain. Queues there on Jakes Herville up towards the R300 junction as well. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It's soccer action. It's Vilakazi, the hero, as Kaizer Chiefs snatch a last-minute victory over Sekhukhune United. And at the Australian Open tennis, Novak Djokovic has set up a mouth-watering Australian Open quarter-final against Carlos Alcaraz. Details around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Today is Monday, the 20th of January, 2025. It's just gone 8 minutes after 6. Good morning and welcome to it, the Monday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. So how was your weekend? What stories dominated your mind this past weekend? Do share those with me. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. Please send those to 061 410 4107. Just your reflections on some of the key issues that played themselves out. You may have read through the weekend press, the various stories that were being reported. I will take your reflections on those. Among the ones that I would want to flag, the battle lines seem to be drawn between the South African Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority and the leadership of the KwaZulu-Natal SOE Ithala Bank. This is after the authority, the PA, Prudential Authority, lodged an application before the High Court for the provisional or final liquidation of the Ithala Bank. The PA claims that Ithala is technically and legally insolvent and has not been able to pay back deposits amounting to about 2.5 billion rand, despite being directed to do so. In fact, some of those directives going as far back as March last year for them to do that, but that has not happened up to this point. However, the bank's leadership, on the other hand, you will have heard, if you were listening on Friday, we did have a conversation with the CEO of Ithala, who was disputing that they are insolvent at all. But at the heart of it, and I've had the opportunity to read through the application by the Prudential Authority, and therefore am able to juxtapose it with what the Ithala leadership are arguing. The Prudential Authority, basically their argument is that all along, in fact, let me start here. Ithala is not a bank as registered by, in terms of the requirements of the Banks Act. A bank needs to be registered before it can engage in the taking of deposits from, the public. And other bankers, bank customers. So you need to be registered. Ithala is not a registered bank. Let's start there. What it is that it was founded under the previous statutes back in the days under apartheid, and sort of has gone through various transformations over the years. But what it enables, what all those transformations have enabled Ithala to do, is to support SMMEs as well as cooperatives and the likes. And that is one side of their business. The public-facing banking services element, that is what is at issue here. Let's be very clear about it. What is at issue is the public-facing banking institution deposit-taking element, which, according to the Banks Act, needs to be registered. You need to be registered to carry out those services. So Ithala, not being registered as a bank, has had this exemption extended by the Prudential Authority over the years. But according to the Prudential Authority, when they gave the last, exemption in 2022, they said to Ithala, this is the last one, this is it. Go out there, get yourself a banking license so you can continue to take deposits. And if you have not done so by December 2023, you will not be able to take further deposits. Well, as fate would have it, in fact, they were meant to do the application according to the documents filed before the court by the 30th of June 2023, and apparently they did not do that in time and only filed an application for registration as a bank on the 30th of June. So the long and short is that the Prudential Authority alleges that despite not having obtained a banking license within the time frame that was given, Ithala has continued to take deposits from the public, from bank clients since December 2023, and basically some 2.5 billion rand in deposits is at stake. They have been instructed, and I think from as early as March last year, to repay those deposits, and under the leadership of a repayment administrator that was appointed by the Prudential Authority of the Reserve Bank. That has not happened. So that is the context to what has led us to this position. But of course, as I said, on Friday, you heard the version of the leadership of Ithala, who are basically saying that we are looking here at an overzealous repayment administrator, and basically that the bank is not technically insolvent. And you're hearing all sorts of voices. I think the Public Servants Association, I think, is one of them that I heard recently. I think in the show with Elvis Presley, they had a representative who was saying that actually this will have huge effects. I don't know. What do you think of this saga? And I think we need to pay attention to it, given what happened with VBS Mutual Bank. It all started like this: murmurs of something is not quite right about VBS, and the pushing back and forth. Oh, this is the only bank available for, people in poorer communities. It has helped so many people. But what do you do in that instance? You had the wholesale looting of VBS Bank. I'm not sure if that is at play in this instance, and it's certainly not been alleged. So let's be clear about that as well. But there is enough that the Prudential Authority says it has seen to have it concerned about the liquidity of Ithala Bank. I don't know, just your thoughts. What are we looking at here? Are we potentially looking at another bank, an SOE, a state-owned company, that will go bust? We will focus a bit on this conversation in the second hour of the show, and we are scheduled to get the perspectives of an expert as well as speak to the KwaZulu-Natal Economic Development MEC to get their perspectives, because they are one of the parties that are cited in that liquidation application. The other story that sort of jumped at me is the story around the applications for university placement. We were all celebrating about a week ago the class of 2024 having done exceptionally well, and that continues to be something that's worthy of celebration. But now focus shifts to the higher education sector, and we are told that the positions and the spaces, it's such a crunch at higher education level. And as I said about a few days ago, News 24 doing some pretty diligent work in terms of the university spaces that are available, saying that, a total of 337, 158 matrics achieved admission to bachelor studies. So they got those passes that allow them for bachelor's degree studies at university. But they gave examples. University of Johannesburg, according to our colleagues at News 24, 693,990 applications for just 10,500 spaces. Walter Sisulu University, 380,000 applications, 7,300 places available. University of Pretoria, 355,000 applications, 9,000 spaces that are available, and so on and so on. How do we solve this situation once and for all? And is university education the only pathway, and should it be the only pathway to a better future in a country where unemployment is so rife, and it does seem that having a university degree sometimes can make a difference, not all the time? Give me a call, share your thoughts and perspectives on these and other issues. The numbers to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. We have all of your regulars locked and loaded, and Musa with your news updates every half hour, Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so, Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning, Ndauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered, and Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Monday edition of The Morning Brief starts now.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
For that, let's say good morning to Ann Musa. Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Tulas.
I see that your favorite trial to follow is back.
It's back.
In court today.
Yeah, quite a lot happening today, and the murder trial of Senzo Mehiwa expected to resume this morning, and that is with Advocate Charles Mnisi now representing Muzi Sibiya, one of the 5 men on trial for Mehiwa's murder, and that is following the passing of his previous lawyer Thulasizwe Simelane. And today, Advocate Zandile Mshololo is expected to continue with her cross-examination of the lead investigator, Brigadier Bongani Kinenda. In other court stories, the Limpopo Premier yesterday announcing that breakthrough in the horrific abduction and rape case of 2 Limpopo nurses, and police arrested a suspect who's linked to about over 8 serious and violent cases within the Lubuahomo policing area in Mankweng, and he's expected to appear in the Polokwane Magistrates Court today. In KwaZulu-Natal, it's the appearance of at least 12 suspects at the Ntuzuma Magistrates magistrate scored it is in connection with the hacking to death of 5 people in what's believed to be vigilante attacks, and it happened last Friday. Another suspect, a 53-year-old, was arrested in connection with the alleged killing of 2 police officers in the Free State, and 3 people have been arrested in connection with the double murder of the 2 Free State police officers. And other stories that we're looking at, it is day 6 of the Judicial Court Tribunal probing the sexual harassment allegations against the Judge President Selby Mbenenge. That continues in Johannesburg today with the complainant Andiswa Mengo on the stand. And just lastly, the Transport Minister Barbara Creasy, as well as a deputy, will be releasing the road safety report for the 2024-2025 festive season, and this report will basically provide an account of the festive season road safety campaign that was launched by the Minister and the deputy in December last year, as well as looking at road crashes and fatalities during this period, or that period rather. So some of the stories that we are focusing on this morning.
Were you saying this period as in the festive season?
Because
in your mind you've not accepted that. That's gone, and that's gone. And
oh, wow.
2025. And Musa, you'll be hearing from her every half hour here on the Morning Brief with your news updates.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So just 2 warnings coming through from the South African Weather Service in as far as the weather is concerned. One is a yellow level 2 warning. It says severe thunderstorms resulting in localized flooding and localized damage to settlements are expected in places over the southwestern parts of KwaZulu-Natal and the east and the extreme northeastern parts of the Eastern Cape. Then there's a yellow level 1 warning. It says damaging winds resulting in difficulty in navigation at sea are expected between Cape Point and Alexander Bay, including the Cape Metropole from Monday afternoon. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon with a minimum of 18 and a maximum of 33. Johannesburg, fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 17 to 31. Mbombela will be fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated afternoon showers, 20 to 33. Polokwane will be fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 17 to 29. Mahikeng will be fine, becoming partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 19 to 33. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 20 to 36. Kimberley, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 23 to 37. Cape Town will be cloudy with light rain in the early morning, becoming partly cloudy from the afternoon, 17 to 24. George, cloudy with light rain from the late morning, and the temperatures there ranging from 17 to 23. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with isolated showers from the afternoon, 18 to 26. East London will be cloudy with scattered showers, 19 to 26. Durban, cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 22 to 28. Richards Bay will be cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 23 to 30. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will see morning fog, otherwise cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 18 to 28.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course, We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
So all eyes will be on, what do they call it? The National Mall in Washington a bit later on today. Donald Trump, of course, will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States a bit later on today. Yesterday, he hosted a rally with supporters in downtown Washington, D.C. to celebrate his upcoming inauguration. Trump is expected to move aggressively on actions designed to reshape government policy as soon as he is sworn in. For more on this and the local aspects of what we are looking out for in the second Trump presidency, I'm joined by Professor Andre Roux, who is an economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time this morning, Prof. So all eyes, as I say, on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. today. But I guess the key question is, why does this matter in as far as U.S.-Africa, U.S.-South Africa trade and economic relations are concerned?
Yes, good morning, and good morning to your listeners. Well, I think Trump's coming into power today on a high. A resounding victory in the election. His party has a majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the economy of America is not doing too badly at the moment. The output is back to pre-COVID levels. Unemployment is remarkably low, and inflation is falling. So he's on a high. As you said yesterday, he had the rally. He pledged to sign off dozens of executive orders within the next few days, if not hours. And these range from the obvious one, the anti-immigration policies. He's pledged to eject hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of so-called illegal immigrants. And of course, the other big one is the one regarding tariffs, trying to protect local industry from imports from anywhere, but especially from China. Now, this is where it starts getting important for Africa, for South Africa, because if one sees a trade war between China and America, Africa and South Africa might get caught sort of in the crossfire with the collateral damage. And bear in mind, his slogan is probably along the lines of, "My enemy's friend is my enemy." So South Africa is seen to be a supporter of China and indeed of Russia, and indeed an anti-Israel kind of protagonist. Then that doesn't augur well for his view of Africa and indeed South Africa. And this puts things such as AGOA at threat, the African Growth Opportunity Act, because in terms of that act, the concession granted to a country in Africa may be withdrawn if America feels that that country in Africa is not showing the line. So I think, on balance, the influence on Africa, South Africa, will be both direct and indirect. I think we also need to bear in mind that he seems to be not all that in favor of immediate measures to protect the environment. He will probably wipe away a number of environmental regulations. He wants to unleash American energy, support fracking, and even postpone incentives to buy electric vehicles. And that for the world is obviously not good news, given the very well-known global climate crisis we're in.
Yeah. Say a bit more for me, Prof, around the issue of AGOA. How does that stack up and South Africa's continued participation and benefit therefrom? How does it stack up with what Trump has been saying about his favorite word being tariff? The favorite word in the dictionary, and he's really been talking tough about imposing all sorts of tariffs. None of that talk has, of course, been directed specifically squarely at the African continent and countries within the continent, but, you know, he is talking tariffs left, right, and center.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he said that he wants to impose tariffs on all imports from anywhere in the world, but particularly, and obviously at a higher rate, on imports from China. Now, that could set off a kind of a tit-for-tat situation. China might take steps in return. We don't want that either. I mean, that's, again, the idea of a trade war. The AGOA incentive, the AGOA scheme, really just means that imports from African countries, are tariff-free. So he's going to eject South Africa from AGOA, and that means our exports to America will no longer be tariff-free, and it will make our exports less attractive to America. We don't want that, obviously. America remains one of our largest trade partners. Something else to consider is that, and I'm talking globally now, is that it just so happens in the last couple of days the World Economic Forum brought out their global risk report. And the number one risk identified by executives across the planet is state-based armed conflict. The number three risk is geo-economic confrontation. So clearly the world as it is in a state of not disrepair, a state of conflict and uncertainty. And I think that Trump's presidency will exacerbate this kind of conflict and uncertainty. Yeah. And obviously Africa will again be in the crossfire. Also bear in mind that Trump doesn't really care all that much about Africa. He has much bigger things to concern himself with. I mean, he has pledged, I don't know how, to bring the war, the Ukraine story to an end. And by the way, that has further implications. He'll probably withdraw support for Ukraine and leave the Ukraine problem to Western Europe or to Europe. Yeah. He's got to deal with North Korea. I don't think they're the best of friends, he and North Korea. We've mentioned the tariffs already. And then just back to the tariffs in America, just bear something else in mind. At the moment, inflation is falling, and therefore interest rates in America are softening. But if he wants to get rid of immigrants, that will raise the cost of labor in America, and that will raise inflation. And he wants to impose tariffs that will raise the cost of imports, which will also raise inflation.
All right. Prof.
So you can't, if you do that, and inflation starts rising again in America, then that will slow down their drop in interest rates. It will support the dollar against other currencies, including the rand. The rand might weaken against the dollar more than it did in 2024.
Prof, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. Let's leave it there for now. That's Professor Andre Roux, who is an economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. The case against corruption-accused former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula continues in the Pretoria High Court today. Nqakula faces 12 counts of corruption and one of money laundering for allegedly soliciting bribes during her time as Minister of Defense. And Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States today, a crowning moment in a political comeback after losing the 2020 election to Joe Biden. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy backlogs on Joburg's Mike 1 this morning. It's a different traffic pattern. This morning it's heavy from Ormonde going up into the Crown, which suggests something has happened between Boysons and the Crown interchange area. That highway often or always the first to get busy, but this morning it's busy in a different sort of traffic pattern that runs through the Crown, very heavily backed up. There's also some traffic building on the N3 North going up into Van Buren Road. That's quite a heavy queue already. A motorist backed up to the cement factory and back down towards Elands interchange. They're coming up the N3 or off the N12, it's all very slow. The N1 through Midrand, already busy as well. Queuing up down towards the New Road exit, the back of that to slow down around the old Johannesburg Road. Mopani Highway, heavy at Theo Martins, all the way down to Bremer Street around the bend. Big truck crash between Empangeni and Richards Bay on the R34 John Ross Highway, just coming up to the Foscor traffic lights. Expect some delays there. And Cape Town's busy on the N2, going in, but another crash this morning at Khayelitsha. It's between Spine Road and Newway, so coming in from Baden-Powell, it's heavy. busy. And then once you get past that, if you off-ramp from the N2 onto the R300 North, you're into another crash delay, collision there between the N2 Highway and Hindle Road, running north up that R300. And Mitchell's Plain, very busy this morning. Looks like issues around the M7, R300, both of those routes heavily jammed up towards the Philippi side. And AZ Berman, pretty heavily back through the roadworks towards R300 as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai, and happy Monday. Could it be that Nasruddin Nabi, slowly but surely, something is shifting at Kaizer Chiefs? Or have I spoken too soon?
Is this a seismic shift?
Is it too soon to say? But
are we feeling it?
Back to their winning ways.
I think so. And, you know, thanks to the fans as well at Moses Mabhida when they were going on for Amakhosi for life. Clearly.
Listen, I'm not a fan of Kaizer Chiefs or any other club for that matter, but I do believe that this league does need a strong Kaizer Chiefs.
No, we do. Yeah. And I think Nasruddin Nabi is onto something here. We can't predict where and how this will end, but so far, so good for Kaizer Chiefs returning to winning ways. And that was in the Betway Premiership. I mean, they... what a saving grace and a stunning goal from Mfundo Vulakazi, clinching a 1-0 win over Sekhukhune United. Moses Mabhida Stadium, the fortress. And there was also a turning point that came when Sekhukune's Vuyo Letlapa received a red card in the 84th minute, setting the stage for Velakazi's brilliance just minutes later. Chiefs have now moved to 5th in the Betway Premiership standings, just 4 points shy of Polokwane City in 3rd. Meanwhile, Sekhukune's impressive 5-match unbeaten streak came to a sudden end. Both teams now shift their focus to the Nedbank Cup. Let's go elsewhere, where we saw Orlando Pirates, Mamelodi Sundowns and Stellenbosch FC have all qualified for the knockout stages of the CAF football after surviving the group stages. Pirates topped their group, while Sundowns and Stellies finished second in their groups before advancing to the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League and Stellies in the Confederation Cup. Now, the Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso expressed relief at qualifying, and this was after AS FAR Rabat equalized 1-1 in the final moments, securing the top spot in their group last night.
Now it's a message for ourselves, for a young team, to say and to know and to understand that we have the capacity to compete in scenarios like this one. I'm not talking about the result, I'm talking about the capacity to compete, to perform, to stay on the game even in the difficult times. And that's the most important today. The result is important, of course. We are top of the group. We're so happy. But again, for me, the most important is the character and the personality that the players show tonight in a stadium like this one and against a team like Ali.
Let's move to Manchester United, who crashed to a 3-1 defeat against Brighton with their problems mounting at Old Trafford. United are languishing in 13th place, and although they are 10 points above the relegation zone, they are far from certain to avoid being dragged into the survival fight. In the meantime, Everton's blistering first half display secured a 3-2 win over Tottenham Hotspur as David Moyes earned his first victory since returning for a second spell as manager at Goodison Park.
So I think my first half performance was excellent, and actually the aim was to go and get the fourth goal. You know, we'd said, let's go and get the fourth goal and make sure that there was nothing at risk, because I think if Tottenham had got a goal, that was their ability Tottenham have got, their attacking play means that you're always going to be under pressure. And actually I think Dom had the chance maybe to make it 4, but he played very well today, and look, it ended up a really good victory for us.
And finally, tennis action. Novak Djokovic setting up a mouth-watering Australian Open quarter-final against Carlos Alcaraz. It was a convincing victory over Yuri Lehechka, 6-3, 6-4, 7-6. Now, of course, Alcaraz is in the last 8 after the Spaniard progressed when British number 1 Jack Draper retired with a hip injury. In the ladies' draw, Elina Svitolina, the number 28 seed, reaching the quarter-finals of the Australian Open, defeating Russia's Veronika Kudermetova 6-1, 6-4. More sport on the morning brief at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela. Happy Monday, Ndauling. So all eyes are on Washington, D.C., where Donald Trump will take oath of office as the 47th U.S. president. And he's already having to deal with some issues in the economic sphere, among them the issue around TikTok.
That's right, listen, happy Monday. So in a surprise move, TikTok has made a comeback for some U.S. users yesterday after President-elect Donald Trump announced plans to delay the federal ban on the app. Trump said he would sign an executive order today to extend the ban's deadline, giving TikTok's parent company ByteDance more time to divest its U.S. operations to a non-Chinese entity. Now, TikTok expressed gratitude to Trump, stating that his move provided the necessary clarity and assurance for service providers to restore access to the app without facing penalties. The company emphasized that this decision is a strong stand for the First Amendment and against arbitrary censorship. Despite the temporary reprise, TikTok's future in the U.S. remains uncertain. Trump has proposed a joint venture where the U.S. would hold 50% ownership of TikTok, but ByteDance is not biting. They've maintained their stance on not selling the company. The ban was initially set to take effect from yesterday following a Supreme Court ruling that upheld the law banning TikTok unless ByteDance divests its U.S. operations. But with Trump's intervention, TikTok is now working to restore its services across the U.S., and some users have already regained access to the platform. I think he just wants TikTok to live stream his inauguration, to be honest.
Oh, and by the way, that's I've been saying the National Mall, that's where the focus will be. It is, in a way, still there, but it will be different because it will not be outdoors. It will actually be inside the Capitol Rotunda in Washington. And by the way, he also likes TikTok now because apparently it helped him do well in the elections, and his posts there do extremely well. Tell me about China's quarter four GDP. You're saying that it has topped market expectations?
That's right, so it's another shocker for markets there. The economy surging in the fourth quarter of last year as GDP expanded by 5.4%, beating expectations of 5%. This boost helped China meet its annual growth targets, with its full-year GDP growth reaching 5%. Now, the growth spurt was driven by stimulus measures implemented by Chinese authorities, including policies to assist the real estate sector, interest rate cuts, and a 5-year fiscal package worth $1.4 trillion. In addition to the stimulus measures, China also saw a jump in retail sales, with December sales increasing 3.7%, exceeding forecasts. Industrial output also expanded, growing 6.2% in December, outpacing expectations. But despite the upbeat economic data, some economists remain cautious, pointing out that China's economy has experienced deflation for 7 consecutive quarters, and weak consumption spending also remains a concern, with domestic growth engines remaining soft. Chinese leaders, in the meantime, have pledged proactive fiscal measures and a moderately loose monetary policy stance for 2025. The government is expected to reveal its official growth targets and additional stimulus measures in March.
All right, Dowling, just give us our first recap for the morning of markets here at home in Asia and the United States.
Kicking things off in the U.S., markets there closed the week strong, with stocks ending in the green. The Nasdaq making the biggest gains there, closing 1.5% higher. The same kind of optimism taking place here at home, with stocks edging higher. The all-share rising 1.25% on Friday, boosted by a 1.6% jump in the financial 15. Sentiment seems to be upbeat all round. We're also seeing some strength on the currency front, with the rand trading at 18.70 to the greenback. Traders across the globe eyeing Trump's return to the White House ahead of his inauguration. It's a sea of green in Asia this morning, with Hong Kong Hang Seng jumping 2.3%.
All right, Ndauling, thank you for that. We'll catch up with you a bit later on. That's Ndauling Lechela. She's back just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief with the second of the morning's reports on the economy, business and the markets.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So I'm still taking your calls. You can give me a call on 086 000 2032 on any of these matters that we've been raising this morning, as well as anything else that may have caught your eye. You may want to weigh in on the developments around the Amazulu King, Mrs. Thulasizwe Simelane. That court case is set to go ahead in the High Court today. But as you know, there have been significant developments, including him calling off his upcoming traditional wedding. That was the news that was dominating over the weekend. But also you may want to weigh in on the ceasefire coming into effect in Gaza and just what that will mean for the ability of people to return and try and pick up their lives, their shattered lives. You can give me a call on those and other matters, as well as those that are raised at the start of the show. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. But for now, let me turn to this now. Over 150 law enforcement officers have been deployed to deal with violence in the Cape Flats. In recent weeks, a wave of gang violence has erupted in several Cape Flats suburbs, with at least 3 shootings reported last week. The South African Human Rights Commission has recently condemned the violence and raised concerns about its impact on residents' safety and education. For more on this, I'm joined on the line by Commissioner Aseza Gungubele, who is responsible for migration, human settlement and climate at the Human Rights Commission. Commissioner, good morning and thank you for your time. So just tell me about your own observations. I think it's been reported that the epicenter of some of this violence has been areas like Lentegeur and Beacon Beach that are said to be really at the heart of it. Just your own observation of the causes and perhaps the impact on the lives of people who live in those areas.
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe. Good morning to the listeners. Thank you for having us. Thulasizwe, the Commission, as we have indicated, we have released a statement condemning what has happened in the Cape Flats. Of course, our observation, Commission is a mandate of doing monitoring on all violation of the rights of the people in the country. So we've been monitoring the movement and also the gang violence in the Cape Flats. Indeed, it affects people's life, it affects freedom of movement. People can't move because of scared of their lives. There's been senseless killing of people in the Cape Flats. It's not only the areas I've mentioned. Across the Cape Flats, you have to go to Mitchell's Plain, Bishop Levis, Nyanga, Kailicha, and Philippi. So we've been monitoring the process. We've been ourselves on the ground, trying to speak to communities, civil society structures, including government, to make sure that this senseless killing does come to end.
And we saw J.P. Smith, the member of the mayoral committee in Cape Town, out and about and basically announcing stepping up of efforts by law enforcement and that collaboration to make sure that there are more patrols. How do you gauge that engagement as well as the response overall by various spheres of government to this issue?
We must take this opportunity to welcome that what has been done, the efforts have been done by the city of Cape Town of having, making sure that there's a visibility of law enforcement agencies. But of course, we think there should be more that we have been done. This has not been started yesterday. They have not started this year. It's been coming for many years. If you look back since many years, even 2019, there was a high report of the people that have been killed through the violence of the gangsters. So we want to call all the law enforcement agencies, being government, being CPF, being the city of Cape Town, including the community leaders, civil society structures. This thing is bigger than all of us. It needs all of us. It can't be only one sector that is involved. So we want to take this opportunity to appreciate commend what has been done by the State of Cape Town, but we think that there's still more that can be done. We need visibility in all sectors, in where you have to issue of clinics, where there's this thing taking place, being at schools, even just general in the society in general, in the community in general.
So I'm just wondering, you as a commission have the wherewithal to, initiate investigations and go even broader and deeper beyond, occasional flare-ups of phenomena such as gang violence in areas of the Cape Flats. Have you done that in the past, or are you considering doing that?
We have considering doing that. What we're trying to do as the Commission, we have taken initiative of investigating. In fact, it is taking place. We are just also waiting for the outcome of it. But also, we also want to, while we're doing that investigation, what is taking place in the Cape Flats in terms of gang violence, but we also want to have a proper engagement with the authorities within the province, that also just outside the province, because we think that the Minister of Police has a role to play on this investigation taking place. But it is a process that we are taking place. We are doing that at the moment.
Yeah, because I mean, for us to be able to respond holistically, I guess we would need to understand the full contours of the problem. And I think, similar to what you've done in the past, including when you did as a commission that work around the July unrest, perhaps such an effort would be quite useful.
Indeed. Well, in fact, I did not want to talk about it on this platform, what plans are we taking. But first, just to say a bit, the Commission each and every year runs a theme of what kind of work we'll be doing. So one of the work that we'll be doing, in particular, focusing on the issues of right to life campaign. So we'll be doing that. So we'll have a holistic approach, not just only in the Western Cape, but just generally in the country, because you will have understand that the killings taking place across the country, people right to life,
yeah,
something that GP violence, everything else that's taking place in the country. So we will have that theme, we will have that comprehensive report, investigating inquiry that make sure that the right to life was a Bill of Rights.
I don't know why you did not want to say it on this platform, Commissioner, because this is the platform to first say some of these things. But that's just me saying that as a joke. Thank you for that. That's Commissioner Aseza Gungubele, who is responsible for migration, human settlement, and climate at the Human Rights Commission.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Quick call from Bulelani. Good morning to you, Bulelani. You want to weigh in on the situation around university admissions?
Yes, morning, brother. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm all right. I just want to throw one stone at this issue with what I'm thinking maybe can be a solution or one of the solutions.
Sure.
You see, I was thinking that maybe because there are so many kids that want to go to university. I do understand the question that is it the university way only that we have to use, but now people do choose what they want to do. Now, what I just want to throw one stone at is, why don't we maybe change the system of studying like the university? Let's say, for example, if you know the Atlantic University, how do you study when you're studying there? You study only online, you never meet somebody. So if they can change the system to be that kind of a system where our kids will learn to be committed into working by themselves, because there you work on your own. And everything that you want to do, it's only your commitment.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's a solid suggestion there, Bulelani, and thank you for it. The model of an open university. I've seen a few universities experimenting with it. And in fact, during the COVID pandemic years, almost all universities switched to online study. You had to keep to a schedule and ensure that you keep up with your work. All of the assessments were based on work that was done online. And that's a solid suggestion there that Bulelani is making around availing higher education to more people by switching to, a dual mode of study in person as well as via the online platform. Thank you for that. We'll continue to engage throughout the show.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Monday across Gauteng. We've got big traffic out of Benoni through to Atlas Road this morning on your way to Joburg. A crash on the N12 at 4 Trekker Road coming across from Oakdean through Alberton towards the N3. That's heavy. A big crash delay just after Klip River on the R59 north coming in from the Vaal. There's a really big backlog through there as well. And just a good barometer of how busy it is. The N1 from John Foster down to New Road is pretty packed and stacked all the way through. Durban's M7 up towards Pinetown is heavy from Hunstedman. And Cape Town, that crash on the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha, still backing things up. The collision between Spine Road and Muway, back in the traffic now at Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Just last month, it was December, the season to be merry, or December, for those who know that it's not just a month, but a lifestyle. Now it's January and life is threatening watching financially. There's back to school and your own goals, and January is on everyone's lips.
Mara, you can get the relief you need right now and start the year strong with the personal loan from Nedbank with access up to 400,000 Rand. Search Nedbank Personal Loans and get a loan that offers you more. Nedbank. See money differently. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
To that story, actually, that we've been talking about a bit this morning, thousands of matriculants may not get university placement as South Africa's higher education system is facing a shortage of space for first-year study. Over 300,000 matriculants have qualified for bachelor studies, but only 202,000 spots are said to be available at public universities. The demand, particularly for sought-after programs like medicine and education, has left many students without access to higher education. Let's speak to Shital Bula, who is from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Good morning, and thank you for your time. Just your overall impressions and reading of the demand for university study, placement versus what is available at the moment.
Good morning. Yes, it's a dire challenge, I think, for many young youth that have just finished secondary education. And I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of filling the gaps. And we need to look at exactly how well are our schools informed and of the options going into tertiary education. Are they fully aware of what the TVET colleges offer? Is everybody skilled and academically inclined enough to be at university? And remember, the whole concept of learning to earning has somewhere been lost in our country here in the recent years with what is happening in the economy.
So explain a bit more about that. Learning to earn, is that the concept you're talking about?
Yes, this is the concept that I have said. You know what? We've got an impoverished country. We've got dire socioeconomic circumstances. And being an academic for many years, I sit at university graduations, and you see the euphoria, the emotion, where the average poor family invests everything possible to make sure that they have a graduate in the family. And here they qualify with a 3-year bachelor's degree, whether it's be arts, social sciences, and lo and behold, a year later, 2 years later, these young graduates are unemployed.
So what are some of the possible solutions then that would address that, as well as a whole rethink of higher education?
Look, firstly, I think we've got to learn to earn, and that is the foundation of rethinking higher education. So even if you look at the university degrees, the youth need to find a niche area, they need to find a specialization. And I also think a lot of it comes from them not understanding that a broad-based degree, for example, in the social sciences, gives you many openings and avenues into various employment sectors, such as communications, marketing, project work, social work, the list goes on, and it's endless. But you've got to be specialized and skilled and find a niche area and have a special area focus. And then secondly as well, I'm not quite sure what the communication levels are and how well informed high schools are when it comes to career guidance. And this needs to infiltrate, and the communication doors need to be opened up between higher educational institutions and the schools, for instance, to say, look, if you go to a TVET college, these are your options. I mean, we've got scenarios in this country at the moment where we've got qualified medical graduates that can't find employment, whereas you've got, and they've spent years, and it's a highly skilled profession, and then you've got, for example, people where you look at hand skills, plumbers, electricians, they have thriving businesses.
Gotcha.
So we need to look at what our economy needs in terms of the service sector.
100%.
Where do our youth need to be skilled enough to offer services for a functional society?
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. Shital Bula, who is from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Zululand.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, the other story that we want to quickly touch on is the story around government reportedly exploring the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange's main bourse. According to reports, the move aims to revitalize struggling SOEs. Let's bring into the conversation Professor Vali Padayachi, who is a power and energy expert and a former executive manager of Eskom and a former senior executive at City Power. Prof, good morning, and thank you for your time. What difference would a listing of an SOE on the JSE make in terms of its financial sustainability?
Good morning to us, to you and the listeners, and many thanks for inviting me to your show. And I hope you're hearing me clearly, because I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. Yes, I think that's an excellent question to start this conversation, because let's take a step back. Generally, when state-owned enterprises require listing and investment, they will go to targeted investors, and targeted investors in the interest of time would express an interest based on two main factors: whether the investment confidence of the country is conducive, and whether the viability and the value add of the state-owned entity is also investment friendly. On both those accounts, we're not doing well. South Africa is also grey listed, so we will not attract the type of investors we would normally go for. And Transnet and Eskom have done that for years. So what needs to happen now, because the state-owned enterprise need finances, the fiscal is constrained, and hence the need to go to a boss, URSC, like the JSC, to bring on board diverse investor base that are not so critical in terms of returns, looking at a long-term approach, and that will still give government and the shareholder an opportunity to bring in much-needed investment to us.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there for now. The line is good enough, but occasionally we are battling to hear you. And I think that, let me make this undertaking that we will invite you back, because this is an important conversation to have around the possibility of listing our SOEs on the JSE and whether that would make a difference in terms of their sustainability. That's Professor Vali Padayachi there. He is a power and energy expert and a former executive manager at Eskom and a former senior executive at City Power. As I said, he's traveling in Australia at the moment. That partly accounts for why that line was the way that it was. At 7 a.m., let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Lamola speaks on case against Israel at the ICJ and Trump's inauguration as the 47th U.S. president. Good morning. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu implemented the ceasefire yesterday, with Hamas releasing 3 Israeli female hostages who are said to be in good health. Lamola explains that the case before the ICJ was a call for a ceasefire, but also for an investigation into the plausibility of genocide that occurred during the 15-month war.
The reason we went to court was to request for a ceasefire, was also some of the provisional measures related to an investigation on the plausibility of a genocide, and the court found that indeed there is plausible genocide, which remains on the table, as you are aware, but we have not yet reached a stage where we can conclude that the case on the merits must be withdrawn, because as you are aware, on the merits of the case, the plausible genocide has already been committed in the last 15 months, so there must still be justice.
The case against corruption-accused former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula continues in the Pretoria High Court today. Nqakula faces 12 counts of corruption and 1 of money laundering for allegedly soliciting bribes during her time as Minister of Defence. It's alleged the kickbacks received by Mapisa-Nqakula amounts to approximately 4.5 million rand. Sibahle Mota reports.
The Pretoria High Court is expected to hear an application by Mapisa-Nqakula's defense counsel on the disclosure of Section B and C of the docket. While the state has disclosed Section A, it is refusing to divulge 2 sections which deal with the correspondence and the investigation diary. Last month, the case against Mapisa Nqagula was postponed when her defense counsel filed its heads of arguments late. The matter will begin at 10 a.m.
The Senzo murder trial will resume in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. Advocate Zandile Mshololo, the lawyer representing accused number 5, Fuzokuhle Ntuli, is expected to continue a cross-examination of the lead investigator, Bongani Gninda. This while accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya, will now be represented by Advocate Charles Mnisi, who also represents accused number 3, Mtobisi Ncube. This follows the death of Sibiya's lawyer Thulani Mgomezulu. Nomtsikilelo Mtabela reports.
Advocate Charles Mnisi, who has been representing accused number 3, Mtobisi Ncube, will now also represent accused 1, Muzi Sibiya, as his new client. Mnisi, who has been part of the trial since the beginning and appraised with all the evidence that has so far been laid before, says they are just ironing out the finer details regarding the representation of his new client.
4 people have been killed in a collision between 2 vehicles on the N1 in Limpopo. Traffic authorities say 3 of the 4 deceased were burnt beyond recognition inside the vehicles, which caught fire after the collision. Transport Department spokesperson Tidimalo Chwene says one of the vehicles had a tire burst, lost control and collided with another vehicle. And finally, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States today, a crowning moment in a political comeback after losing the 2020 election to Joe Biden. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
Trump and his Vice President-elect J.D. Vance will take their respective oaths of office around noon local time, and a ceremony moved indoors due to frigid temperatures in Washington, D.C., where lows of -11 and highs of -5 degrees Celsius were expected Monday. Low temperatures could also impact crowd size. In a speech to the nation, Trump will lay out his agenda for the next 4 years under his America First ideology, with a number of executive orders likely to be issued soon after the ceremonial aspects of the event are concluded.
Recapping the top story, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
This January, to save money, you could turn off your house lights and use your cell phone's flashlight, or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash, and make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Monday across Gauteng. We alluded to that a little bit earlier. If you're coming in from the Vereeniging area off the Vaal, there's a crash just after Klip River on the R59 causing delays. Collision staying south on the N12 eastbound between Reading Interchange and 4 Trekker Road, causing quite a heavy backlog. Roadworks on the R21 both ways opposite Tembisa, northbound to Oliphant, southbound towards Bapsfontein. There's some very heavy traffic on that R21 both ways. You'll need to know about that if you're heading down for flight connections to the airport. Delays getting in Victoria this morning. R21 north to Fountains is busy, and the N14 north to Eupheus Road. Both of those options into central Pretoria jam-packed. Breakdown before you get to Spaghetti Junction, so the N2 running north is quite slow, and there's also one on the southbound side before Spaghetti Junctions are coming from Umgeni Road, busy as well. Then if you're driving in from Cape Town, passing Khayelitsha, wanting to turn up towards Delft and Belleville, 2 crashes, one on the N2 before Meway at Khayelitsha, causing a delay, and then shortly after that you're back in traffic queuing on the N2 up to the R300 North Ramp due to a crash there between the N2 and Hindle Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headline Soccer Action. Mamelodi Sundowns advancing through the CAF Champions League group stage following a 1-1 draw against AS FAR Rabat. And we also have rugby, where the South African hopes in the Champions Cup have officially ended. We'll all have the details for you around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 8 minutes after 7 on this Monday. It's good to be in your company. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. This is the second hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. Let me tell you what's coming up on the show. We will start this hour with a focus on the goings-on around Ithala Bank and the processes that have been kicked off by the Prudential Authority of the South African Reserve Bank to have it either liquidated in the interim or perhaps finally liquidated, given what has been transpiring over the last few years. So we'll be speaking to the Reverend Musa Zondi, who is the Provincial MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, of course, from the side of the shareholder of Ithala Bank. That conversation coming up shortly, and of course we'll then get the perspective of the analyst Kaya Sitole, who's been tracking this matter and has a firm understanding of the issues that are at play. Then we want to focus a bit on politics and talk about the ANC and the decisions that it has to take around its provincial leadership structures that are called PECs, that is the Provincial Executive Committees in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. The ANC is considering its options for the future of these two provincial leadership structures, and it comes off the backdrop, of course, of the dismal electoral performance that the ANC suffered in the elections in May last year. We'll have a look a bit into that within this half hour. A bit later on, just before 8 a.m., we will be talking and reflecting on the rescue operations that were undertaken in the area around Stilfontein at the Buffelsfontein gold mine, and just reflecting on that whole process with some of the community organizations that have been at the forefront of calling for those people who were underground to be rescued one way or another. Over a period of months, actually, those calls went on, and finally, after a court order, that has now happened, and we will be looking back on that. We have all of your regulars locked and loaded once again, but of course, you can be a part of the conversation. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Monday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger Double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
This January, to save money, you could cut back on the milk in your cereal, or you could switch to OUTsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if OUTsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. With OUTsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
12 minutes after 7. So the battle lines appear to be drawn between the South African Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority on the one hand, and the leadership of KwaZulu-Natal SOE Ithala Bank. This after the authority lodged an application before the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Division of the High Court for the provisional or final liquidation of the bank. The PA claims Ithala is technically and legally insolvent and has not been able to pay back deposits amounting to nearly 2.5 billion rand, despite being directed to do so as early as March last year. All right, let's bring into the conversation Reverend Musa Zondi. He is the KwaZulu-Natal MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. Good morning to you, MEC, and thank you for your time this morning. What has brought us to this point? The KwaZulu-Natal government is the sole shareholder in Ithala Development Finance Corporation, which includes Ithala Bank. What has brought us to this point?
Well, I must begin thanking you, Thulas, for inviting us to have a say on this intractable matter. I think you have analyzed what has brought us to this. To this battle that we have, and I was listening to you earlier on in the first hour. But I mean, those matters is the Prudential Authority that you know that refused to continue to exempt Ithala SOC from the requirements of the Banking Act. But I want to address that issue because anyone who reads what is available on the surface can actually get a PhD cum laude, because the underlying issues, I mean, they are left untreated. You know, you were quite correct in saying that Ithala Bank predates the present dispensation, which started in 1994. And it was allowed to continue because there is a provision in the Banks Act, which is an act of the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. So we're not alone on this one. So because we were, if you like, a state-owned banking institution, therefore the advice then was that you don't have to apply for a banking license like your commercial banks and other things. And then what would happen is that the Minister of Finance would use his powers under Section 2 of the Banks Act to exempt that state institution to enable you to provide banking services, strictly speaking, deposit-taking activities. That has been the case all along. Then there came a point where, because this was happening under the Ithala Development Corporation, where the same Prudential Authority that is in the past now could be in the fourth administration. Then they said, no, it is recommendable that a separate, dedicated entity, after, you know, at a national level, the government had changed the Companies Act to provide for state-owned companies. So separate your banking activities from the corporation activities. That was done. That is how now Ithala SOC, which came about as a dedicated company to do that.
Yes.
It operated under that exemption until the end of 2023.
So, MEC, that separation, if I can interject there, is important, is it not? Because I see a danger of conflation of the developmental objectives of Ithala, supporting small businesses and cooperatives and the likes. What is at issue at the moment, as far as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with the banking operations that need to be registered in terms of the Banks Act, and that's solely what we're dealing with here.
Strictly speaking, it doesn't need to be registered, because the Banks Act then removed the provision from the Banks Act which enables the Minister of Finance to exempt certain institutions that conduct the business of a bank. It still exists. I've discussed it several times. It's still there. Why would it be there if it is not necessary? But be that as it may, Ithala SOC tried several times in 2016 to apply for a banking license. It was declined by the same Prudential Authority. In 2023, it reapplied again, having complied with all the requirements that have been pointed out. I mean, it was declined without it being assessed. That is why I'm saying this issue, there is more to it than what appears on the surface.
What is this more, MEC?
That's all as a responsible public.
Sure. Put it on the
hold of office, I can say. And also, I would have preferred to speak to you after I've listened to your analyst, because whatever he's going to say, he can get a PhD cum laude on the basis of the information available. But you see, he doesn't have access to the intelligence information that I do have. That affects black business institutions.
All right, MEC.
I do want to make that point.
Yeah, MEC.
Because for the sake of what is going on,
yes.
Because all these analyses that are being made now, I mean, it's correct. I mean, you'll end up with whatever it is.
All right, MEC, hold on there. So, because you are saying that you would prefer to hear what Khaya Sithole has to say on this matter, I'll ask you to hold on. Let's bring him into the conversation. Khaya, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning. So, I don't know. Let me start with that broad question. You have been following this issue quite extensively. Your understanding of what brought us to this point where we see now Ithala facing provisional or final liquidation.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. So I think the crux of the matter is, contrary to what some people may believe, an exemption is actually not a guarantee. An exemption is granted at firstly the discretion of the Minister of Finance, as it was, and after the Reserve Bank was restructured and the Prudential Authority was formed, then that responsibility moved to the Prudential Authority. So what the Prudential Authority then said in 2022 is that they informed Ithala Bank that the exemption itself would not be renewed. In other words, Ithala simply had to take steps in order to apply for a full banking license. And that obviously brought us to December 2023, when at the point in time when, unfortunately, they hadn't been able to apply for a banking license, it was then that the Reserve Bank brought in a repayments administrator. It is then the repayments administrator was obviously that had line of sight into what the business of Ithala is doing, and he's the one that's obviously formed the opinion that perhaps it should not be allowed to carry on as it was. Now, the idea that we all operated from a blind spot, well, I think that is obviously an accident of the management decision that has enabled us to operate from a blind spot, because if you want to break down the communication and the transparency barriers, you simply communicate the information and enable everybody to know exactly what has happened, what has transpired, so that everybody can be able to form an opinion on what has happened here. So what we've seen is that the Reserve Bank has said its own version of the story, Ithala has then said its own version of the story, and then it's a process of trying to reconcile the two and then saying, well, actually, it looks like this is where we are. I've actually seen a lot of information that Ithala has. I've actually seen their financial statements up until October 2024. So I know exactly what the state of affairs looks like. The problem here is that we do not seem to know what the repayments administrator has seen that has then informed him to say to the Reserve Bank, well, actually, the situation is a bit more different from what has been published out there. And to then accuse people who work on information that's been published of then working from a blind spot, I think that's completely disingenuous.
Is there something, Khaya, in the ownership structure and shareholding of Ithala that perhaps is a barrier to that threshold of registering as a bank as required by the law? I've heard arguments to that effect. Do you have an understanding of that?
Well, what happened is that a couple of years ago in Parliament, you actually have two institutions that had the same problem. You had the Post Bank and you had Itala that had the problem that in the way the rules have been written, those two institutions couldn't really apply for their own banking license based on their shareholding structure. What Post Bank then did is that it went through an entire process of detaching itself from the Post Office, and that's what the Post Bank Amendment Bill was all about. So now the Post Bank is in a position to apply if they choose to do so. The error that was created in relation to Itala is that for some reason, when the parliamentary process was being undertaken, the wrong amendment was processed. And the wrong amendment is the one that simply said that those that are owned by national institutions may apply. Those that are owned by provincial institutions may not apply. Itala is still owned by a provincial institution, which is why you're speaking to the MEC now, and that makes it a non-starter. It simply means that there's absolutely no point in Itala trying to apply for a banking license until the rules have changed or until the Reserve Bank says, look, you can apply even though you are still owned by a provincial entity. This has been known for many years, so there's various documents that you can see where Itala itself went to Parliament and highlighted that this is an issue that needs to be resolved. So in fact, sometime last year, when this crisis escalated, it was Itala that once again highlighted to MPs that actually this is the crux of the problem, in that never mind what's happening operationally, we still have this big impediment that simply says, well, can you even bother to apply for a banking license? And until the Reserve Bank changes its approach, or until the Banks Act is amended, or until that clause that makes it impossible for them to apply is amended, they simply cannot apply.
Kaya, in terms of the finances, I heard you say that you had line of sight of the finances and the state of play there. On Friday, I was in conversation with the CEO of Itala, who disputes that the entity is technically insolvent. And I've seen, in the in what was put out by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, when Itala's authorization was suspended as a financial services provider. It cites all the way from 2020 the difference between assets and liabilities. Is that what you are talking about?
Yes, and quite importantly here, there is a very, very, very nuanced understanding of how one must read the balance sheet of a bank. So the balance sheet of a bank does indeed have assets and liabilities. And indeed, according to Itala's own submissions, which I've received yesterday, their assets do exceed their liabilities. The issue tends to be in the question of what we refer to as the liquidity and the solvency profile. In simple terms, if I have taken money from you as a depositor and then I've lent that money to someone who wanted a home loan, it simply means that if you want your deposit back, it may take some time for me to be able to be in a position to pay it back. So you have to be able to ask yourself the question of, well, if all the depositors wanted their money back, would you be able to actually give them back in the shortest time frame possible? Which means that you need to be able to assess that, well, actually, when you advance this money to other clients, and those are assets, how liquid are those assets? How possible would it be for us to be able to convert it into cash in order to be able to pay depositors if they need to be paid? So we actually have to do a secondary reading. It's not adequate to simply say that we have assets and we've got liabilities. There's also what we refer to as the liquidity profile of those assets and liabilities, which is what a Reserve Bank would be looking at, and the Reserve Bank would be asking an institution like Itala to make submissions on a continuous basis on what the liquidity profile looks like. Whether that seems to be what triggered the administrator, again, we do not know. No one has spoken to the administrator. We simply have a press statement from the Reserve Bank that says that, look, based on what we've been told, we think a liquidation is the way to go. MEC,
let me bring you back into the conversation here. Earlier on, you were talking about the exemptions that Itala kept getting that allowed them to continue to operate the banking operations. Surely, MEC, it's in the name, it's in the word, exemption, that this is not the norm. You are being exempted from the norm, and when the people who are giving you this exemption from the norm are saying to you, this is the last time we're giving you this exemption, therefore comply with these conditions and ensure that you get a license by this date. If you don't do that, you really cannot turn around and say you have an entitlement to an exemption. Or am I completely wrong in that understanding?
No, you are quite correct. You have a PhD cum laude, and I'm grateful. And I'm grateful to Kaya's analysis. I mean, PhD cum laude again is very fair to say that if you have a quarrel, which I said, is not on the surface with the same prudential authority, and you've got to apply to the same prudential authority, would you win? You can't win. And it is not correct to say that Itala didn't apply for the banking license. It did apply in 2023 to the same prudential authority. And I mean,
on the last day, MEC, on the 30th of June, when they had since 2022 to actually lodge that application, even that just says something about, how seriously this matter was being taken.
I don't get the import of what you are trying to indicate.
Okay, please proceed, MEC.
Yes. I mean, I would have wanted to understand.
No, I was saying the application, from what I read on the papers by the Prudential Authority, the application was actually lodged on the last day that was possible, having had from 2022 when they were told that this is the last exemption. Actually, if I recall correctly, if I have my dates correctly, the application being lodged on the very last day, that on its own says, if you're taking the process seriously, from the day they say to you, this is the last exemption, you start implementing the conditions that are in the exemption that will lead you to that application for a banking license. I guess that's what I was saying.
If you want to register for your car license, then they say the last day is tomorrow. And if you comply with it before the closing hours of tomorrow, are you outside of the process? You are not. You are within the law.
Okay.
So it's a spurious argument, that one. So this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say here, we've spoken, we've engaged the national minister to say there was a period so that we could have a temporary period for us to transition from the old to the new rates. And what Kaya did point out, for example, when he said the financial matters amendment bill at the time, when it was introduced in Parliament, it did not provide, it did not exclude provincial entities from owning an entity of a bank.
I'm completely out of time.
Until the last
I do
moment
apologize.
that
Yeah.
they struck that one off.
Yeah.
So either way you look at, I mean, our hands are tied.
MEC, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. I'm completely out of time. That's Reverend Musa Zondi. He's the KwaZulu-Natal MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. The first 3 Israeli hostages freed by Hamas under the Gaza ceasefire deal have reunited with their families in hospital. Medical staff in Tel Aviv say all 3 are in a stable condition. And the 12 people arrested in connection with the hacking to death of 5 men in Inanda, north of Durban, are due to make their first appearance at the Ntunzuma Magistrates Court. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Crash on Joburg N12 eastbound at 4 Trekker Road in Alberton. That's a big queue from Reading Interchange. And behind that, the R59 pushing back to Swakoppies Road. Real problems getting off the R59 onto that N12 into that crash scene. And if you're not trying to get into that crash and you're going up the 59 into the Talisa Park, a load of traffic light problems there as well. The Mike 1 heavy from Parktown up to a crash by Greyston Drive heading into Sandton, really badly backed up. Roadworks on the R21 between Clayville and Tembisa, both ways between the Olifantsfontein exit and Bobsfontein Road. The R21 to and from the airport's really heavy. Avoid the R21 driving up into Pretoria this morning at Fountain Circle. You can be asked to sit in some very heavy backlogging. Durban, 2 breakdowns on the N2, 1 northbound at Spaghetti Junction, 1 southbound at Spaghetti Junction. Traffic is dreadful this morning. The N2 north from Cement Factories jammed, the N2 south from almost Queen Nundy Drive. Big traffic into Pinetown, the M7, a broken down vehicle out by the N3 highway. That's heavy from North of Dean and North Park. In Cape Town, the N2 inbound onto the R300 north. 2 crash scenes, one on the N2 before Meway and one on the R300 before Hindle Road at Delft. There's a really big queue in on that routing that starts on the N2 at Baden-Powell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So I see that Mamelodi Sundowns have been able to keep this team as far as possible from the Champions League knockout stages, meaning that South Africa has 3 representatives in the next stage, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, what a team of excellence we had over the weekend. Yes, as far. We kept them as much as possible. There was a draw, though, but nevertheless, Mamelodi Sundowns has joined Orlando Pirates and Stellenbosch FC in the knockout stages in CAF competitions after a 1-1 draw, with AS FAR Rabat securing their spot in the CAF Champions League quarterfinals. Peter Shalulile giving Sundowns an early lead, but AS FAR equalized late, leaving Sundowns second in the group. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers stunned the 12th-time champions Al Ahly with that 2-1 win in Cairo, finishing top of their group. And Stellenbosch FC, they had already sealed their place in the Confed Cup quarterfinals. Let's go to Kaizer Chiefs, who returned to winning ways in the Betway Premiership. They edged 10-man Sekhukhune United 1-0 at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Now let's go to the SAFA Technical Director. Walter Steenbok says they are now going to strengthen the South Africa Under-17 Women's Technical Team Department amid the ongoing FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup qualifiers. Botswana defeated Gabon 21-2 over 2 legs to set up a meeting with Nigeria, who reached the second round at the 2024 FIFA Women's World Cup.
It's quite encouraging, but the team is fairly inexperienced and very young. In these 2 matches, we had few 2008 girls and a lot of 2010 and 2009. So it's a long-term project. We started last year in October with an under-15 camp, and then they went to COSAFA to play in the COSAFA. Again, it's a very, very young team. There are lots of areas that needs improvement, you know. So we are going to strengthen the technical team. We're also going to strengthen the team moving forward for the Nigeria game.
Elsewhere, Manchester United crashed to a 3-1 defeat against Brighton as Ruben Amorim's problems mounted at Old Trafford. United are in 13th place, and although they are 10 points above the relegation zone, they are far from certain to avoid being dragged into the survival fight. Let's hear from their coach, Ruben Amorim.
Everybody here is underperforming. No matter what the circumstances, we are underperforming. And we have to accept that it's unacceptable to lose so many games for any club in Premier League. Imagine Manchester United. So it's a really hard moment, but we have to continue. We have to continue. There is no other way. We need to suffer and continue.
Now, Everton, they secured a 3-2 win over Tottenham Hotspur as David Moyes earned his first victory since returning for his second spell as manager at Goodison Park. Phil Foden struck twice as Manchester City climbed to 4th in the Premier League with a 6-0 rout of Ipswich yesterday. And then we had Kylian Mbappe. He struck twice, producing a brilliant performance to power Real Madrid to a 4-1 win over Las Palmas and take the reigning champions top of La Liga. Rugby, South African hopes in the Champions Cup have officially ended. The Bulls redeemed themselves with a dominant 48-7 win over Stade Francais, running in 7 tries to drop into the Challenge Cup round of 16. Meanwhile, the Stormers narrowly missed the mark against Racing 92. They fell 31-22. The Sharks 66-12 was their drubbing at the hands of Bordeaux, with Damien Penaud scoring 6 of Bordeaux's 10 tries. Cricket action, Raik Daniels claimed 4 wickets to help South Africa's under-19 men on their way to a series-levelling 5-wicket win over England in the second Youth One Day International taking place at Western Province Cricket Club in Cape Town yesterday. And finally, tennis, Novak Djokovic has set up a mouth-watering Australian Open quarterfinal against Carlos Alcaraz after a convincing victory over Yuri Lehechka. Alcaraz is through to the last 8. He progressed when British number 1 Jack Draper retired with a hip injury. And in the ladies' draw, Elina Svitolina, the number 28 seed, reaching the quarterfinals, defeating Russia's Veronika Kudermetova 6-1, 6-4. Here's Elina Svitolina.
Well, it was a long time ago. I feel like, it was a lifetime ago. So many things happen. Having our daughter Sky, and then surgery as well. It's many things happen, and I'm really pleased with the performance throughout this tournament, and just really enjoying this win today.
That's how we wrap up the morning brief sport. There'll be more top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again, Dowling. Talk to me about Sasol eyeing recovery of its US-based chemicals unit. It's called Lake Charles, is it?
Yes, it is, and it's looking to revive that unit, which is worth about $12.8 billion. This is in an effort to boost earnings. The Energy and Chemicals Group is also looking at listing Lake Charles as a standalone entity. Sasol CEO Simon Baloyi aims to turn around the company's fortunes after it reported its first loss since 2020 and took billions of dollars in write-downs. Now, the company has about $4 billion in debt and suspended dividend payouts, with its shares tumbling 55% last year. It was one of the worst performers on the JSE. Nabaloy sees the Lake Charles facility as a key asset in generating cash and raising investor confidence. The company has set targets to increase the facility's contribution to earnings and strengthen it as a standalone entity. While chemicals make up about a third of Sasol's earnings, the U.S. region currently contributes only 6%. Sasol's international chemical business has faced significant challenges, including mismanagement issues, hurricanes, and cost overruns. But Baloy is optimistic about the unit's potential, saying it could provide lots of strategic options to create shareholder value, including, of course, a potential listing or a merger.
I wonder if we'll get to a point where the South African Police Service reports on cyber crimes as a category on their own. And I say that because you are saying this morning that cybercrime tops the risks for South African firms.
That's right, Julius. And it's not just here at home. We're seeing this taking place globally. And this is according to the latest Allianz risk barometer. Cybercrime, including data breaches and ransomware attacks, is the top concern for companies in South Africa this year. This worry surpasses other risks such as business interruptions and natural disasters. Now, the study reveals that cybersecurity is a global concern, with companies worldwide ranking it as the biggest risk to their operations. Now, the rapid development of AI has worsened cyber risks, making it a persistent concern for organizations. Rishi Bavaskar, global head of cyber risk consulting at Allianz Commercial, notes that the growing reliance on technology has made cyber risk a top priority. Now, recent cyber attacks in the country, including incidents affecting Wesizwe Platinum and Sibanye Stillwater, just highlight the severity of this risk. The government and public institutions have also been targeted, with the National Health Laboratory Service and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure falling victim to cyber crime. Now, the Allianz Risk Barometer revealed that the improved energy supply and outlook have led to a decrease in concerns about critical infrastructure blackouts. New risks, however, featured in the barometer include a shortage of skilled workers and macroeconomic developments such as government austerity programs. Geopolitics and protectionism remain a concern globally, with ongoing tensions in Ukraine and Southeast Asia highlighted there.
Finally, Dowling, please give us another roundup of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
Starting off in Asia, now markets powering through after a conversation between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping raised hopes for easing U.S.-China tensions. With that, the Hong Kong Hang Seng making the biggest gains there, up 2.4%, followed by a 1.25% rise in the Japanese Nikkei. And then in Wall Street, futures are mixed ahead of Trump's official return to the White House. Traders cautious while eyeing Trump's new policies. And then coming back home, local markets closing last week on a high, the all-share gaining 1.25%. The rand in the meantime steady, trading at 18.70 against the dollar.
All right, we'll talk to you a bit later. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back just after 8:30, just previewing market activity ahead of the start of trading on the JSE for this Monday.
Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Good morning to you, Raz. So let's start in Mozambique. A new cabinet for the new president, Daniel Chapo, and it was sweeping changes all round.
Absolutely, Thulas. We saw on after his inauguration, he went on appointing the new cabinet, even if it is not fully fleshed now. But what we saw a first prime minister, a woman who was a former minister of justice, Maria Bevinda Levy, who was a former justice minister, being given the post, the prime minister position. He has still retained the Minister of National Defense and the new Minister on Foreign Relations, also being a woman. He still has to appoint other 7 ministers to that. He has dealt away with secretariats and now he has put new ministries in moving forward. And we know that Venancio Thulas have said that we'll put a stop to the protest for another 3 months until his 25 demands or measures have been met.
Now, I can't tell you how happy I am about this next story. The outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden posthumously pardoning Marcus Garvey. Just tell me a bit more about that.
Remember, Marcus Garvey is a Jamaican national hero, but he was also influential in the politics
Yes.
of Africa, of Back to Africa movement. When you think even of South Africa, you go to Cape Town, the Clement Kadile's influence, your PAC, ANC were influenced by the Jamaican hero, Marcus Garvey. So remember, in the 1920s, he was charged for mail fraud. Hence, this pardon has come through, or what you call expungement, that was done by the former president of the U.S. just on the eve of Donald Trump 2.0 to us. This is a very great move that even the Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness welcomed this decision, it's a historic day for the Jamaicans, and it's part of reparations that they've been waiting for the people of Jamaica. And that's how, Thulas, we see it has taken so long for this African son of the soil to be pardoned in USA.
Yeah, what a great figure he was, Marcus Garvey. I always got the sense that in, the way that he carried on his activities, particularly those aimed at empowering Africans and black people in the United States and in the diaspora as well, there was just an attempt to just lampoon him. And that's the sense that I got. But I think there was a sense of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There was a lot of value in what Marcus Garvey had to say, certainly, around the economic empowerment of Africans. Let's talk about Nigeria. Nigeria joining BRICS. Tell me a bit more about that.
You must remember that Brazil is currently the rotating chairperson of the BRICS 2025. Now, on Friday, they've accepted Nigeria as a partner country in the multinational BRICS countries, becoming the 9th BRICS partner, including Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Uganda. And that's where Nigeria becomes now a new partner. And remember, they've been pushing to be part of the BRICS Plus. Hence, we see now this is going to strengthen the global south and reform the global governance. Hence, we see now BRICS is almost to 45% of global GDP is on the side of the BRICS member states.
And to Tanzania we go, and whenever you hear the ANC talking about various models to follow on how to do succession planning and leadership contests and the likes, Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania is always the example that they settle for. And I see that they've made moves now ahead of the next elections.
Absolutely. Remember, Tanzania decides in October to last. And now here again, you see the role of the former president, Mrisho Jakaya Kikwete, pushing for the recommendation of the current sitting president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, as well as the Prime Minister, Hussein Mwili, to be the candidate for Chama Chama in 2025. An interesting move that we have seen in Tanzania coming from this elder, Chakaya Kikwete, leading the party in terms of yesterday, Tula saying that let's go with President Samia Suluhu for the second term.
Take us back to 20 January in your historical archives, 20 January 1987. Sipho, what happened on this day in history?
Thulas, it is a very important day when we talk of Mozambique. Remember Judge Cecil Mago Commission that was hearing the death of Samora Machel. It was the beginning of these hearings on this day in 1987. But we know, Thulas, the TRC 1998 rubbished that Judge Cecil Mago's findings on the death of Samora Machel, and he took blame to the apartheid government that they were involved. Remember, the judge said that it was a technical error. But when the TRC went on looking at who killed Samora Machel, indeed, they found that the apartheid South African government was involved in the murder and assassination of the late president of Mozambique, Samora Machel.
Before you go, let me tell you very quickly, Sipho, on this Samora Machel story. I had the privilege of interviewing a few years ago the investigator from the National Transportation Safety Board of the United States, whose testimony was critical in the Mago Commission at the time, coming to the findings that it did. And I interviewed him a few years ago, and he said now, looking back, he also has doubts about whether or not there was pilot error, because he says there was a credible theory, alternative theory, that needed to be investigated for all of us to satisfy ourselves that what were the circumstances around the crash of that aircraft in Mbuzini. So just something to think about. If the man whose testimony was critical now says, actually, it would be worth relooking this.
Absolutely, but remember, Samora was coming from Malawi. And it was important because it was during those times of Nkomati processes, so the killing of Samora Machel was also linked to the liberation struggle of South Africa. Hence today, we still have a site that we still commemorate Samora Machel during October month on the 19th. As I said in the conversation, SFM observing the Education Month.
All right, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update this morning.
My business is very stressful. Construction and plumbing, anything can go wrong. The reason I chose OutSurance because they align with my vision with regards to customer service. The fact that they won the award for best business insurance makes me feel like I'm in the right hands.
Switch to Business OutSurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Major backlogging going on around Pretoria's Fountain Circle. Now, the Circle has been closed this morning, basically between the Circle and the CBD, bottom of Tabo Sohumi. So that section of effectively Nelson Mandela is closed, going in and out of Pretoria. So really big backlogging, particularly on the reroute through out towards Brooklyn, I guess, along George Storer. So some really heavy traffic coming in on the R21 North, on the Eupheus Road, Christina DeVitt, that section there. Very heavy backlogs around Fountain Circle, trying to avoid it. And just next door, you've got lights out on Eupheus around the N14. So a lot of congestion on top of congestion, if you like, in that part of Pretoria this morning. Lights are down coming through Centurion, worth a mention. Roy Ace Crowell at Panorama. Roy Ace Crowell southbound is quite a heavy backlog. Four-way system, actually got school traffic and thousands of traffic lights that are not working there. And also Rivonia Road, there's some lights down as you come from Morningside, or into Morningside, coming down from Rivonia. It's quite heavy on your way into Sandton. Joburg's highway networks, the N12, the earlier crash at Trekker Road, looks like it's out of the way. All lanes are open. That has eased up the R59 approach to Reading interchange to get onto the N12. But if you're on the 59, there's still some lights out at South Rand Road and then South Rand at Heidelberg and probably at Tennyson as well. So it is a bit of a mess through that Thulasizwe Gloucester Park area this morning. Down into Pietermaritzburg, KZN. Pietermaritzburg just generally busy. There's traffic all over the region this morning where there normally isn't. So just factor in some extra time there. Queues at Key Ridge on your way to Pietermaritzburg. Big queues on the M13 from Fields Hill through Cluth out towards Maytime Stores. And a major backlog going into Pinetown on the M7 from Queensborough all the way through towards the N3 highway. And breakdown still with us. N2 north at Spaghetti Junction. A queue from Cement Factory south at Spaghetti Junction. A queue coming through from Inanda Road. And then Cape Town, you've got those two earlier crash scenes on the N2 and R300. So the N2 inbound stays heavily backed up coming through from Baden-Powell towards the R300, and the R300 north turning off that N2 stays busy up towards Hindle Road as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
All SASSA Gold cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3#. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
6 minutes to 8 here on SAFM. Let's talk politics now. The African National Congress says it is considering options for the future of its provincial executive committees, PECs, in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Of course, that issue serving before the party's National Executive Committee. After poor electoral performances in these provinces, the party is likely to take decisive action against these provincial executive committees. And I'm joined now by Dr. Ongama Mtimka, who is a political analyst and the acting chief director of the Raymond Mhlaba Center for Governance and Leadership at the Nelson Mandela University. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So it's been said that leaving the situation as it is no longer sustainable. It's not an option. Something has got to be done about either dissolving or strengthening, weighing all sorts of options, and that we are told that that conversation is robust. What options does the ANC's National Executive Committee have around the provincial leaderships in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal?
Good morning to you and your listeners. Thulas, it's acting director. We don't have the chiefs yet.
You're not layering and layering.
Yes. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to be a fly in those meetings to look at how these decisions are being rationalized. Because I think that the broad issues here is that, one, the ANC is not used to enforcing accountability for performance in its leadership structures. You don't acquire office or lose office in the culture of the ANC on the basis of issues like performance. You acquire office and lose office on the basis of whether you are in favor or out of favor with the powers that be, wherever those powers that be may wield power. What I think has happened here is that in the election aftermath, Gauteng overplayed its autonomy in ways that suggested a federalist principle in the politics of the ANC. And they created an untenable situation in which national leadership was questioned about to what extent do they apply the principle of democratic centralism by choosing their own path when it comes to, this post-election government. With respect to KZN, yes, indeed, you could argue that most of the issues relate to the election campaign, the fallout with the kingdom, and there's been simmering issues about the sustainability of the KZN coalition. But I think that it is less so in KZN. It seems to me that things there have become stable, at least on the surface, unless the ANC has got the same intel that what's happening in Gauteng is actually taking place behind the scenes in KZN.
And do you understand the focus on these two provinces? I mean, the ANC overall nationally didn't do that great in terms of the elections, but I suppose, I don't know, I was just trying to think about why, if we are talking electoral performance, the focus would be on these two provinces. Is it because if you do well in those two provinces and they needed to do well in those two provinces and they didn't, if they had done well in those two provinces, perhaps their fortunes would look completely different?
I don't know about KZN, but Gauteng made itself a priority. It made itself a priority. You see, in the ANC, people build on things. So, for example, Panyaza Lesufi and his leadership were already being seen by others in liberation political terms, like not in terms of what's happening today in South Africa and what pragmatic coalitions are being formed. He is being interpreted as the ultimate or last defense against giving power back to white people. And that, for me, presented something else for the potential to build factions. Obviously, Gauteng doesn't have power in itself in the ANC, but it presented itself as the launchpad of something which may become bigger than the politics of whether to GNU or not to GNU. It may be a launchpad for a faction that wants to build going to 2027. So I think that National is wanting to show them who is in charge and realign that province. I think it may still be that they come back, some of them, because I don't think they would want to completely, push them to a potential coalition of the wounded with others. But I think that they want to strike enough to say in a democratic centralism still has a place in the ANC.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Dr. Ongama Mtimka, who's a political analyst and acting director of the Raymond Mhlaba Center for Governance and Leadership at the Nelson Mandela University. And that brings us to 8 a.m., time for a news update with N. Musa. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident, and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, Lamola speaks on case at the RCJ and suspects arrested in connection to Inanda mass killing to appear in court. Good morning. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu implemented the ceasefire yesterday, with Hamas releasing the 3 Israeli female hostages who are said to be in good health. Lamola explains that the case before the ICJ was a call for a ceasefire, but also for an investigation into the plausibility of genocide that occurred during the 15-month war.
The reason we went to court was to request for a ceasefire, was also some of the provisional measures related to an investigation on the plausibility of a genocide, and the court found that indeed there is plausible genocide, which remains on the table, as you are aware, but we have not yet reached a stage where we can conclude that the case on the merits must be withdrawn, because as you are aware, on the merits of the case, the plausible genocide has already been committed in the last 15 months, so there must still be justice.
The first 3 Israeli hostages freed by Hamas under the Gaza ceasefire deal have been reunited with their families in hospital. Medical staff in Tel Aviv say all 3 are in a stable condition. The BBC's Jonah Fisher was at the hospital when the young women arrived.
In terms of their general health, all 3 of them were walking and they seemed clearly in buoyant moods. In terms of what this means for them psychologically, and there will be psychologists here available to work with them, they will have to begin to try and address and to work through the trauma that they have no doubt experienced over the last 15 months being held captive, and almost certainly have had a miserable time for that period in captivity. So there will be physical and psychological things that will be addressed.
12 people arrested in connection with the hacking to death of 5 men in Inanda, north of Durban, are due to make their first appearance at the Ntuzuma Magistrates Court. The 12 were arrested on Friday, just hours after the discovery of 5 bodies, which were dumped at a local sports field in the area. The arrest has led to a series of protests, with community members calling for their release. Nonjabula Mtungwa Makamu reports.
Bambai residents are expected to protest outside the Ntuzuma Magistrates Court in support of the 12 people. They are said to be linked to the brutal murder of 5 men who are alleged to be criminals who were terrorizing the community for months. Since they were arrested on Friday, there has been hostility in the area, with community members embarking on protests, including outside the local police station.
Illicit cigarettes worth over 14 million rand have been confiscated at the Beitbridge border post in Musina, Limpopo. A suspected drug dealer driving the truck has also been arrested. Police say the illicit cigarettes were being transported by a tanker. Police spokesperson Thulani Mashaba says the suspect will appear in court soon.
The suspect was driving a white truck with a tanker trailer when he was stopped by the police at the port of entry. The driver told the police that it was empty, but they suspected it to be loaded, and it was taken to the ramp zone at the commercial side and therefore searched. During the search, the police discovered that it was fully loaded with illicit cigarettes of Remington Gold brand, and the suspect failed to provide satisfactory explanation regarding the origin of the cigarettes.
Further field, and finally, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States today, a crowning moment in a political comeback after losing the 2020 election to Joe Biden. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports.
Trump and his Vice President-elect J.D. Vance will take their respective oaths of office around noon local time, at a ceremony moved indoors due to frigid temperatures in Washington, D.C., where lows of -11 and highs of -5 degrees Celsius were expected Monday. Low temperatures could also impact crowd size. In a speech to the nation, Trump will lay out his agenda for the next 4 years under his America First ideology, with a number of executive orders likely to be issued soon after the ceremonial aspects of the event are concluded.
Recapping the top story, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there's a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS CAR to 43187.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's the big backlogs you need to know about this morning. Fountain Circle, certainly worth avoiding if you want to save yourself some time. Nelson Mandela going off the R21 is closed from the Circle going into the CBD. Something's unfolded there, so there's a massive backlog of traffic on the R21 north from Monument Park. The N14 up to Eupheus Road's queuing heavily. Eupheus Road from Roger Dyson around through the N14. No traffic lights there, so that's bad. And then, of course, you get caught as you get onto Christian de Wet on that run through to Fountain. So R21, Eupheus, Christian de Wet, N14, just avoid them. It really is very heavily backed up, all sorts of diversion delays in that area as well. Joburg's Mike 1, Boyston through to Parktown stays really quite heavily backed up. A lot of issues around Durban this morning. Breakdowns on the N2 at Spaghetti Junction, both north and south, so you're going to sit there for a while. Crash at Maytime, so the M13 from Kloof, Fields Hill, heading out towards Pinetown is heavy, and the M7 from Queensborough, really big, really thick traffic going slowly up into Pinetown. The alternative Stapleton Road up to Eden Road up towards the M13 is really badly backed up. And Cape Town, the crash on the N2 inbound is cleared at Khayelitsha, but it hasn't really eased the traffic. There's a crash as you come off the N2 inbound onto the R300 north in Delft. 2 lanes are closed on the R300, and that's causing big delays on the N2 inbound to that R300, and the queue starts at Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. It's cricket action with the Super Kings facing the Royals today in the SA20 tournament. And we also have news from soccer. South African teams making waves in CAF competitions that include Mamelodi Sundowns, Orlando Pirates and Stellenbosch FC. More details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 8 on this Monday. Good morning. We are into the third hour of the morning brief. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's good to be in your company this morning. Quite a number of conversations that we have triggered this morning, and we've talked quite extensively around the issue of Ithala Bank, and we had that conversation with Reverend Musa Zondi, the MEC there in KwaZulu-Natal for Economic Development, of course representing government as the shareholder to Ithala Bank amid the moves by the Prudential Authority of the South African Reserve Bank to place it under provisional or final liquidation. And that conversation, if you caught it, I'd like to hear your reflections on it. I see that as one or two people are reflecting on the developments around Ithala. And of course, we've been talking about university spaces that are available. The figures are staggering, and it's really triggered a concern and perhaps a conversation that needs to be had about what are the alternatives. What are the alternative pathways for access to higher education, given that the numbers just don't stack up in terms of the people seeking to enter first-year study at university versus the places that are available to offer those people. The University of Johannesburg, for example, according to the work done by Pregs Govender and News 24, 693,990 applications for 10,500 available spaces. You can just imagine. CPUT, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, 518,309 applications, 9,235 available places, and so on and so on. So I've been asking that we think creatively around how we solve some of these issues. 2 new universities were built in the new dispensation, well, not so new dispensation. Since 1994, we've had an addition of a few universities. The University of Mpumalanga is an example, Solplaki University in the Northern Cape. But it does seem that the demand for university spaces continues to rise, and we're just not coping. How do we create and reimagine higher education, including universities, but perhaps including other pathways to access to higher education? Engage me on that, and as well as any other matters that may be on your mind this morning. The number to dial, 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Monday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
Kickstart your new year with low-cost insurance for your older car with Outsurance Essential. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. So if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rand. Add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rand. SMS car to 43187. That's car to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, lots of conversations on the go. Let's start with the reflections on Ithala Bank. Let me start with you, Kabelo, in Durban. Good morning to you. You want to talk to me about Ithala?
Good morning, Thulas. Compliment of the season to you and the guys that are helping you behind you. And then secondly, congratulations to the United States for electing the president that will serve the interest of the American, not a puppet of the other president, like our president here in Africa. So congratulations to the United States of America. Thirdly, Thulas, we all know that for taking Ithala's license, it's well orchestrated by our government. When we are saying national as the Reserve Bank, that is why we are saying the Reserve Bank must be in the hands of the people, the hands of the government. Because they started with there's a private company called 360. That Prudential is a devil, is here to finish off all the financial institutions that serve the interest of the black people. Now, will you imagine that the state-owned or the semi-state-owned bank can be revoked the license by the private sector, which is the Reserve Bank? It doesn't make sense at all because, look, firstly, it should be given an exemption that this is our state-owned bank. It should not be even applied. The Reverend, he says the MEC, there were resolutions that were taken by the parliament. Now, when they change that resolution, they don't cater Ithala and say, you were part of that resolution. You said you cannot apply. The Minister of Finance should take charge. Now, when they're changing it again and say everybody should apply, but not the provision, what does it mean? Even if Ithala, they can apply the license, they're not going to get it because they are not catered for. They say except the provisional, they should not apply for that. That's nonsensical, resolution. But we know, lastly, we know the reason for Ithala. Ithala's got shopping malls, it's got buildings, it's got everything. Now, what they need, there are people that they want to take over Ithala, watch the space. The private entity or the private banks of our associates, our relatives, they want to take over Ithala. That's what they want to do. Ithala will be owned by the other people that we don't know. That's all.
Kabelo, thank you for that this morning. That's Kabelo out in Durban. Let me hear from Nduduzo Ngema. Good morning to you, Nduduzo. Also on the same topic of Ithala.
Good morning, thank you for a great show.
Thank you.
I just want us to reflect genuinely on this issue because at sometimes we suffer from selective amnesia. There is a serious onslaught and financialization of our country.
Mm-hmm.
The banks are taking over. Not so long ago, government announced a 200 billion COVID rescue for businesses, SMEs, so people with debt and so forth. And it went to financial institutions. We've not received a report on how that rescue was actually applied. But what we are seeing is that, like the previous speakers indicated, all black financial institutions are being targeted and are being relegated. And this is not the inclusivity that is being advocated. And also, just to check if some of our even ministers of finance, because this thing started strongly under the Kodan administration of finances of our country, and it's continuing because apparently, Thulasizwe, in the show one day, maybe you will have to come back to us after you've done your investigation and tell us the shareholder profile of our ministers of finance. Because not so long ago, I had the current one who was a board member at one of the big banks prior to him becoming the Minister of Finance. So these things are not happening in a vacuum, Thulasizwe.
I see.
And we need people like you to help South Africans to unearth the truth and also not be apologetic about the truth. But we need that report.
Right.
Which institution, what did the banks do with the 200 billion COVID rescue program that government initiated?
All right, Nduduzo, thank you for that. And as far as the rescue, the package that was announced during the COVID years, I do believe that the Auditor General has been reporting from time to time about how that package was used, unless you are talking about a completely different package from the one that I'm thinking of at the moment that was meant to assist businesses in distress, certain sectors. It was a whole extensive package that was announced by the president. I think it came up to about 500, was it 500 billion? All right, I don't want to use a figure and it turns out that I'm incorrect. But if that's what I'm thinking about, and it wasn't all money, of course, some of it was tax, relief and the likes. I can't remember the details because it's been quite a few years, but I do know that the Auditor General was responsible for reporting on that. And the assignment you've given us, we'll give it a thought and see how we can advance it in terms of looking into the shareholding that you allege is of finance ministers, past and present.
Thulasizwe Simelane here. I think we do need a state bank in this country. So the only thing that the government can do is to convert that Itala Bank into a state bank. Simple. The only problem that they have is that Itala Bank is not prepared to forego its provincial shareholding structure. But we need a state bank in this country. Commercial banks are killing us. And the reason why this is not being talked about is because the boards, people who occupy the boards are the former MPs of this country. Thank you very much.
Thulasizwe, good morning. It's Clinton here. Thulasizwe, you see, there's a reference approach. It's what we call, it's a Mickey Mouse approach. This thing of waiting for the last day to do something, really, this is why we are where we are. I mean, come on, you can't even compare what license like he did. Come on, I mean, it's beyond pathetic. And look where they are. Look where they are right now, because really, sometimes you have to ask yourself, what have we done to deserve such poor, incapable leadership? Thank you. Great show.
Right, thank you for that, Clinton. Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, in the bigger scheme of our conversation with Reverend Musa Zondi, the last day application that I was pointing to may not be of that great import compared to the other issues that are at play that have to do with the fact that, I mean, they were told this is the last exemption, and after this you will need to apply for a banking license, specifically applying to the banking activities. And it's important to emphasize this because as far as I understand it and from the papers, this has to do with that element. And in fact, Reverend Musazondi also acknowledging that the other elements that from Itala that have to do with the work that it does with cooperatives and the likes are not part of this dispute. This has to do with the taking of deposits, which is highly regulated in our country, in terms of the Banks Act and the like. So let's see how the situation is going to be resolved. Certainly the Prudential Authority now has applied for the liquidation of that element of Itala Bank. Let me take a call from TK in Burgersfort. Good morning to you, TK. You want to talk to me about university registrations?
Hi, Caesar. Good morning, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yes, I want to air my views on the registration adversities and the problem that we as a country are facing. I mean, what I'm going to share with you and the listeners is that's just my own observation over the years. Number one, the problem is the parents. Number two, the schools and the Department of Higher Education. Just in short. In terms of the parents are living their dreams through their kids. If I've not been to varsity, I must not force my kids to go to varsity. Why I'm saying that, again, there's a serious growing myth over the years whereby families, society believes that if my child has been to varsity, then we brag as a family. And to a sense that if your child didn't go to varsity, for example, the TVET college, they get looked down as if they are not so intelligent. Just over the weekend during the family setup, one of the child had to be scolded at because she passed with a bachelor, but the parents and she wants to do nursing through the college. She was so shut down to say that that's inferior. And so you see the angle I'm going. So now through that, kids have to please their parents, not following what they aspire to do, and then go to VAS. Not all of the kids, but most, based on my observation. Now, and that results in high numbers in college. Then the second part is that the TVET college have got spaces. I mean, I've got friends in the TVET space. I spoke to my friend last week. They still have open registration. They haven't even met their target on the engineering side, but yet the kids are flocking onto the what do you call onto university. Gotcha. Now, in the industry I am, if we have 100 university graduates in engineering and 100 from TVET, I can tell in terms of our hierarchy now, we have let's say we have about 40 artisans, but one engineer. So that tells you that there's more demand on the skills level, I mean, on the TVET side than the university. And that goes further to say, if the schools knew what skills are in short, what skills does the country need, they should need to bring in and be serious about career guidance so that when these kids finish the school, they are able to. And then lastly...
No, TK, I've got to move on. Thank you so much. That's TK in Burgersfort. They're making a good point about issues to do with social attitudes and the aspirations of parents and perhaps the subtle and unintended channeling of children towards certain careers that perhaps don't fit what the economy needs at the moment.
Morning, Thulas. South African government says every child, whether documented or undocumented, has got a right to education. Do they have the schools? Do they have enough universities? There is a lot of competition for placements. That's the reason why Trump says Americans first. Those undocumented, documented, all they want to reach university. Are there enough universities? Are there enough schools? That is the question to ask. There is a lot of competition. The whole Africa is in South Africa. What do we do? That is the question that the government must ask itself. Norman from Brixton.
Thank you for that, Norman. And that conversation around uncontrolled illegal migration was always going to be something that features in conversations of this nature. I wonder what the actual numbers look like. But I do take the point that you are making about resources that are available for the population.
Ethical is what defines our business. I think OUTsurance does have integrity. They are not just there for the money, they're there to create a relationship. It's like a partner in business. It's the best thing we've ever done to switch over to OUTsurance. It's a no-brainer.
Switch to Business OUTsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
26 minutes after 8. Rescue operations were called off last week at the Buffelsfontein gold mine in Stilfontein in the northwest. During the operations, rescuers used a metal cage to pull up 78 bodies and 246 survivors, all of whom are illegal miners who had been underground for months. Let's bring into the conversation Chris Rutledge, who is the Executive Director of the Mining Affected Communities United in Action, Makua. Good morning to you, Chris, and thank you for your time this morning. So just your overall reflections. It took a while to get us to a point where this was being approached as a rescue operation. We had a bit of a standoff, for quite a number of months, but eventually the courts ordered that approach this as a rescue, rope in the necessary skills, and this is the result, what I've just read out of that operation. Your overall impressions of how the operation went?
Yeah, thanks very much, Thulasizwe. So, we at this point, we very glad that the rescue operation has come to an end, that all of those lives that could be saved has been saved. We're also mindful that at least 87 people have died, and that there are, a number of bodies that still remain below ground that we are never going to be able to retrieve. So, on the bigger scope of it, it's an absolute disaster in the sense that it was a deliberate action by the state. It is a massacre. And if we look at the way that things have unfolded since the operation to rescue those individuals have gone, we see that not only has there been a neglectful attention to health. So, for example, the Northwest Department of Health said that they admitted 6 people. Our information suggests that there are at least 20 people. And then there are hundreds of miners who are detained immediately, who are emaciated. Doctors have been saying they've never seen this kind of starvation in their lives. And so for these people to now be languishing in jail and not to be receiving medical treatment, it kind of paints this narrative of how this whole saga has been. It's been just one, process of neglect from the time the operation started, even to now when people are requiring medical attention. We also have information that some of the very, very ill individuals are chained to their bed. This is despite the fact that they are weak, emaciated, and half dying, and the fact that they are locked in a ward with armed guards, and still they are chained to their bed. This is inhumane. No, not even at international level has this kind of treatment been ever approved or justified. But this is exactly what the state is doing. So when you have ministers saying we must show them no mercy, we must smoke them out, and all of this, then you really, on the bigger scale of it, it is an absolute horrendous, I've never kind of seen this kind of wanton murder. Besides what's happening in Israel in my lifetime.
Sure. Strong words you are using there, Chris. Describing it as a massacre, wanton murder. What should be the next steps to establish, as a matter of fact, what are the circumstances and causes of death in each case?
Yes. So we are trying to work with the state to get independent observers to participate, well, at least to monitor the autopsies. We know that in some of the individuals that have already been retrieved in the first batch of people and bodies that the community rescue team brought up, that there were clear indications of starvation. There is, very high possibility that this will continue to be the case with the 8 bodies that has been retrieved.
So we are going to be monitoring all of those as best we can. We're trying to monitor those who have been detained and their health conditions. And we're also, trying to monitor those who are in hospital and are requiring attention. So it is a massive responsibility that the Stilfontein Solidarity Committee has undertaken. But somebody's got to do it, because at the moment we cannot trust the state to do it. We've also pointed out that the state has been consistently putting misdirected information or false information into the public domain, which just obscures the ability for South Africans to understand the true extent of what is happening.
All right, Chris, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Chris Rutledge. He's the Executive Director of the Mining Affected Communities United in Action, Makua. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, South Africa goes to the 2025 World Economic Forum with the aim to position the country as an attractive investment destination. Leaders from government, civil society and business will gather in Davos, Switzerland this week for the 2025 World Economic Forum. The 27-year-old suspect arrested in connection with the rape of two nurses at Gatshwene Clinic near Libuagomo in Limpopo is this morning expected to make his first court appearance in the Polokwane Magistrates Court. And 90 Palestinians have been released from Israel's Ophir prison in the occupied West Bank under the Gaza ceasefire deal. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's the big ones this morning, the ones you need to steer around. The R21 going up into Fountain Circle. In fact, any route going into Fountain Circle from the south, going into Pretoria should be avoided. A truck is overturned between the circle and the first exit into the CBD off Nelson Mandela Drive. So technically, the crash is on Nelson Mandela Drive. That's closed from Fountain Circle. So R21's at Monument Park, N14 backs to Centurion, Eupheus backs to Roger Dyson, and Christina de Witt, which runs through the circle, is backed up to Eupheus. A couple of traffic lights down in that area as well. It's a real mess. Stay away from it. Joburg side crash N1 North after Winnie Mandela. So that's still very busy coming up from the Randburg side. And a breakdown at Craft Road if you're in from Boksburg Benoni. Bit of pressure from as far back as Jet Park this morning. Durban's had a really busy back to work Monday. The N2, that breakdown before Spaghetti Junction still there. Big queues from the M7. Another breakdown between Komashu and Umhlanga. So that's your second queue on the N2 North. Also the M7 from Queensborough North Dean, really slow still, even at this hour. Getting up to the N3 if you're on your way to Pinetown. It's heavy. A crash between Kloof and Hillcrest near Maytime, backlogging things as well. And Cape Town, this N2 remains really heavily backed up. There's a crash as you come off the N2 onto the R300 northbound towards Delft and Cowes River and Belleville, if you like. So the crash is actually on the R300, but behind that, the N2 backs as far as Baden-Powell Drive. Some real big pressure passing Khayelitsha to get into that R300 queue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
So Zai, the JSKs, Joburg Super Kings, lost to the MICs. MI Cape Town, and now they're seeking to redeem themselves.
At first I was wondering, are we talking cricket? Or is this like, the...
No, I just wanted to say MIC.
I know, MIC
Mumbai
sounds...
Indians Cape Town.
Mumbai Indians Cape Town. That's exactly it. But you know what? It's time to move on, they say, especially after they've lost, and they hope that they're not going to forget their wickets while they're at it. That's the Joburg Kings. They want to bounce back after their first defeat of the tournament against that team, MI Cape Town. Assistant coach Albie Morkel says the team won't dwell on the loss. They're now preparing to face the Paarl Royals at Boland Park this evening at 5:30. The Super Kings have suffered a further setback. Their fast bowler, Gerald Coetzee, ruled out of the tournament due to a hamstring injury. Meanwhile, the Paarl Royals are flying high after an 8-wicket win over the Pretoria Capitals and will be aiming to hold their spot near the top of the log. Other cricket action, spinner Sajid Khan took 5 wickets and Abrar Ahmad another 4 to guide Pakistan to a 127-run win on the third day of the first test against the West Indies in Multan yesterday. Soccer news, South African teams making waves in CAF competitions. Mamelodi Sundowns joining Orlando Pirates and Stellenbosch FC in the knockout stages after they had a 1-1 draw with AS FAR, which secured their spot in the CAF Champions League quarter-finals. Peter Shalulile giving Sundowns that early lead, but AS FAR equalised late, leaving Sundowns second in the group. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers stunned the 12-time champions Al Ahly with their 2-1 win in Cairo, finishing top of their group. Stellenbosch had already sealed their place in the Confed Cup quarter-finals. Kaizer Chiefs returning to winning ways in the Betway Premiership. They edged 10-man Sekhukhune United 1-0 at the Moses Mabhida Stadium yesterday. And SAFA Technical Director Walter Steenbok says they're going to strengthen the South African Under-17 Women's Technical Team Department amid the ongoing FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup quarterfinals. Now, Botswana defeated Gabon 21-2 over 2 legs to set up a meeting with Nigeria, who reached the second round at the 2024 FIFA Women's World Cup. Plans are already in place to assist the team, where Steenbok says they're going to embark on a national roadshow to bring together more suitable players.
End of the month, we're going to have a big trial in Cape Town, because some of the players we already scouted in the Cecil League, the Cecil League playoffs, which were in the Western Cape. So Coach Desri and some of the coaches have spotted a lot of players there, who are already 2009 and 2008. So we'll be having about 40 to 30 players that we'll look at in Cape Town. Then after that, we're also going to move around the country and make sure that we don't leave any 2008, because we have exceptional 2010s and 2009.
And rugby, South African teams in the Champions Cup have officially ended. The Bulls redeemed themselves with a 48-7 win over Stade Francais, running in 7 tries to drop into the Challenge Cup round of 16. Meanwhile, the Stormers, they narrowly missed the mark against Racing 92, falling 31-22. However, the Sharks, their 66-12 drubbing at the hands of Bordeaux, left fans disappointed. And tennis action, we saw the second seed Alexander Zverev reaching the Australian Open quarterfinals for the 4th time, beating the number 14 Ugo Humbert. And Madison Keys eliminated former finalist Elena Rybakina 6-1, 1-6, 6-3 to secure her place at the Australian Open quarterfinals. The American is now on a 9-match winning streak and will face Elena Svitolina next. That's a wrap. More sport on SFM at around 12:30 with John Herica. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Dowling Lechela. Good morning to you once again, Dowling. So tell me about businesses' expectations around trade conditions in this country over the coming months of this year.
So local businesses are cautiously optimistic about 2025, and this despite current trade conditions remaining under pressure. The latest trade conditions survey from the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry reveals that while only 35% of respondents reported favorable trade activity in December, 65% expect trade conditions to improve over the next 6 months. According to independent economist Richard Downing that works on that survey, growing optimism may be attributed to a sense that the economy is beginning to recover. Now, while there's optimism, Downing highlights that significant challenges persist, particularly in supply chain. Rail and sea transport issues have caused disruptions, making it difficult for businesses to meet demand. Now, the survey highlights structural weaknesses in the trade sector, including a 26 index point difference between present supply deliveries and expected deliveries. Input costs have eased slightly, but inflationary pressures are expected to rise again, potentially complicating monetary policy. Now, despite these challenges, employment in the sector has remained relatively stable, with 41% of respondents reporting a rise in hiring in December, and 57% of respondents plan to hire more people in the next 6 months, indicating a positive outlook for job creation.
And we continue to get a clearer picture of the fallout from the protests in Mozambique, this time around using data about the truck volumes going into Mozambique.
That's right, Silas. And the South African Association of Freight Forwarders reported a drop in truck volumes through the Lebombo port of entry, with numbers falling below 500 trucks per day compared to the usual 1,500. Now, the route through Maputo has become an alternative for South Africa's bulk mineral exporters, particularly coal miners struggling to rail their products to the Richards Bay coal terminal. And most of South Africa's chrome is also exported through Mozambique. Grindrod, one of the companies experiencing losses, the group reporting that 24 ships were delayed, with 6 cancelling entry to port following the protest. Meanwhile, the Minerals Council of South Africa estimated that 53% of South Africa's chrome exports and 10% of coal exports went through Maputo in 2023. Just highlighting how important that is. They are expecting those numbers to be lower for last year. Now, Mozambique ports and railways reportedly lost an estimated $10 million due to its inability to transport goods during the protest. The company requires $6 million to repair damaged railway infrastructure and normalize operations.
Trump 2.0 begins today. How will that and other issues play on the markets today?
So it seems like markets have priced in, Trump 2.0, and they're likely to start the week on a positive note. Local markets will be following their global peers. Traders eyeing commentary out of the World Economic Forum and looking ahead to mining production and inflation data out later this week. Meanwhile, on the currency front, the rand heading into Trump's inauguration on a firmer footing as the dollar remains steady. It's trading at 18.17 against the greenback. Over in the U.S., futures are mixed ahead of Trump's big return. Traders are also eyeing Netflix results. Those numbers out tomorrow afternoon. And then over in Asia, markets on track to end the day in the green after a conversation between Trump and Xi Jinping raised hopes for easing U.S.-China tensions.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. Have yourself a great day. Ntauleng has been watching all things economics, business, and the markets for you over the last 3 hours here on The Morning Brief.
Get ready to make your life easier with TV License's new website features. We upgraded to the secure iVery 3D payment gateway and the ability to manage your account information, view, print, and download a detailed TV license statement. You can make website queries for an account and technical support, which has made things immensely easier. It is now a smooth, effortless process that can respond to all user inquiries quickly and efficiently. It is a great way to quickly get the help you need without worrying about a thing. Get started now and enjoy the convenience of TV License's new website features. Visit www.tvlic.co.za today. TV Licenses, do it for the convenience that matter.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
All right, 17 minutes to 9 here on SAFM. Gun violence is a problem that plagues the entire continent of Africa. A decade after the African Union's Agenda 2063 made an objective to silence the guns, Africa continues to struggle with pervasive violence due to guns. The availability of firearms, coupled with economic instability, inequality, and climate change, poses a grave threat to the continent's peace, stability, and development. Let's bring into the conversation Claire Taylor, who is a member of Gun Free South Africa. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So my understanding is that you've been doing a bit of work. We associate Gun Free South Africa with the issue of firearms in South Africa, but actually you've been engaging in a bit of work that has to do with availability and proliferation of firearms across the continent. Tell me a bit more about that work in support of the objective to, quote-unquote, silence the guns, as the AU said.
Morning to the Thulasizwe. Yes, that's right. Gun Free South Africa has been working with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and we've developed an activist guide to support activists' work in silencing the guns in Africa. And this is in recognition that to date, Silencing the Guns in Africa initiative of the AU has been very government-focused, very top-heavy. And so this activist guide is a way of mobilizing grassroots and communities to work either with government, but also critique government, and to also do their own work on the ground to silence the guns in communities. But the focus, as you say, has been to date, Gun-Free South Africa looks very much at South Africa. And so part of our interest in developing this activist toolkit is pushing recognition that South Africa has got a very particular role in silencing the guns in our country because of the burden that South Africa places on the rest of the continent in terms of not only gun violence levels, but also gun availability.
So in terms of this activist's guide around silencing the guns in Africa, when you were doing that work, what did you find are some of the features of gun proliferation on the continent? Because at least in my mind, you have those countries that are in a state of conflict where I've always wondered, for example, where do all these AK-47s come from that are killing so many Africans? And I don't know, in my mind, I think perhaps to say they're from the Liberation War times may be a bit overly simplistic. There may be more features to it. Then you have the issue where countries control and are quite stringent, some countries, around who as an individual can own a gun. Are those some of the features that you looked at, and what picture emerges when you look at that?
So you're right, there's a whole range of ways in which gun violence plays out on the continent. And so, for example, one of the things that the activist toolkit says is that we mustn't only look at silencing the guns in conflict. That's been the focus to date of the African Union Silencing the Guns initiative. But South Africa is, along with Lesotho, has got the highest levels of gun violence on the continent, and we're not a country at war. And so what we're saying is that you have to expand that definition to include gun violence that involves crime and interpersonal disputes, as we see in South Africa, and not just conflict. Regarding the sources of weapons, one of the things that did become apparent is that fraud and corruption and theft of licensed guns is pervasive across the continent. So you have guns that are leaking, for example, from military stores in many countries, where there are high levels of gun ownership owned by the state, that those guns get leaked either inadvertently or deliberately through criminality into sub-state actors' hands, for example, in civil conflicts. South Africa is one of the few countries that has information on gun losses from private citizens. And so what we see in South Africa is that private citizens are the biggest source of illegal guns in this country. So private citizens report the loss or theft of 23 guns every day, and the police report the loss of 2 guns every day. But the overall message is that we have to tighten controls over licensed gun stocks, be they owned by the state or private citizens, to stop their leakage. But one of the things as well that the activist guide does is, in addition to recognizing that we can't just focus on government top-down interventions and stop the supply of guns, is that we also have to address demand for guns. So in South Africa, there are high levels of crime, and people are scared, and they're looking into ways to protect themselves. And so we see a high demand for guns. In other countries that are, as you say, in conflict situations, particularly where you have, for example, cattle rustling is a big problem in the Rift Valley. And so people are looking for guns to protect their livelihoods. We have to address those demand-side factors. And one of the biggest drivers of demand across the world, in fact, is the militainment industry, it's called. The kinds of movies, the TV shows, the games that people engage in. And it's really interesting research coming out that is addressed in this activist guide as well, showing how the gun industry colludes with, for example, movie makers to portray guns as, you know, the good guy with a gun who always wins. If you get shot, you're never permanently disabled.
All right.
And so it's addressing those myths.
All right, Claire Taylor, thank you for your time this morning. Claire Taylor is a member of Gun-Free South Africa, so fascinating bit of work that they've been doing there, just taking the conversation beyond the South African borders, but looking across the continent and developing what is called the AU's Silencing the Guns in Africa Activism Guide. You'll know, of course, that from Agenda 2063, the African Union did declare that part of the objectives is to, quote-unquote, silence the guns in Africa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Avoid Fountain Circle. Going into Pretoria, it's all shut down from the Circle into the CBD along Nelson Mandela Drive. That's due to a truck crash and diesel spillage. Some big traffic on the R21, N14 and EU Fies Road to Christina de Wit as a result of that. Durban's had a really busy morning. M7 into Pinetown up to the N3 stays heavy. Another breakdown at Cliffdale, so that's a mess going up from Key Ridge on your way to Pietermaritzburg. And breakdowns N2 North at Spaghetti Junction and N2 North at Mshlanga. 2 queues to work through there. And driving into Cape Town, the N2 inbound stays fairly heavy. The problem seems to be that collision on the R300 as you come off the N2 onto the R300 North. That's where the crash is. That's where the delays are. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1998, 500 grams of sugar cost about 3 rand. Now, it's about 20 rand. There's nothing sweet about how the cost of living has gone up. But even in times like these, Outsurance is committed to saving you money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 for a quick and easy way to save. Let's hear what Rosemary has to say about the saving on her 2019 Ford Figo.
I phoned into Outsurance to get a quote. They were super efficient, super quick. I'm saving 421 rand a month. I'll stick my neck out and tell them to phone Outsurance.
Enjoy life-saving services like Help It Out with 24/7 access to panic assistance, roadside assistance and home assistance with just a tap on the app. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. Limits apply. T's and C's online.
Celebrate the festive season with SABC Plus. Register on the SABC Plus app or website and you could win 10 gigs of data per month over the period of 6 months, as well as stand a chance to take home one of 6 Samsung A05s smartphones. Entering is easy. Register on SABC Plus, complete the survey, and simply SMS the keyword SABC Plus and your unique PIN code to 49979. It's that simple. Make this holiday season unforgettable with SABC Plus. Terms and conditions apply. SMS costs R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's continue the conversations we've been having this morning. Let me take a call from Pindile in the Eastern Cape. Good morning to you, Pindile. You want to talk to me about the placement of learners in schools?
Thank you, Thulasizwe. Thank you. I'm calling from the Eastern Cape.
Sure.
Pindile Zwini. Man, I really need the minister to intervene in the placement of our children in schools, because now I submitted, I'm going to speak about myself, I submitted an application for my child to be admitted on time last year, June, July. And told that, okay, fine, by November or October, your child, the results will be out. November on the 21st, I was then called to say that my child has not been accepted for various reasons, unknown to me. And I mean, the Act is clear in that, and to state that any child or children or a child who wants to go to school cannot be deprived of such. Secondly, then, if the school principal rejects a child, then he or she must then place that in writing. That's what the Act says. And it has not been done. My child has been on the waiting list now until this morning. She hasn't been told to go back. I've been really assisted only by the SGB chairperson. I really appreciate what he's been doing for me.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine how distressing this must be for you.
For the child, I do understand that. I do understand that there's a process. But the child, I'm so scared as what this child of me would do, if I don't monitor her for this 24 hours.
Yeah.
Because she was hysterical this morning.
Yeah.
I really need the minister to intervene. The circuit manager, I got a WhatsApp call from the circuit manager who said he will see that my child has been accepted. He's gone now.
Which area is this in the Eastern Cape?
This is in Adelaide.
Adelaide, okay.
Adelaide.
All right, please hold on. Don't go anywhere. Just hold on.
Okay.
Let the producers take your numbers. Hopefully, as I was saying last week, someone will intervene, and perhaps we can have a situation where we are able, in a way, to assist you with that, and perhaps someone who is listening and is able to intervene in the Eastern Cape and assist Pindile there with the admission of a child. Mvuyisa, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the ANC?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, sir?
I'm not well. I don't want
What's
to lie.
wrong? What's wrong?
You know what?
Lay it on me.
You know, I've since learned that, I was among the people who was happy when Ramaphosa took over, But I want to tell you, especially you will know this as a child of the ANC because we were together with you in the youth league. So
I was never in the youth league.
Okay, so let me not expose you.
No, you're not exposing me at all. I was never an activist in the youth league. But do go ahead, make your point. Yes.
Yes, my point is this one. It appears to me that everyone have to be accountable except Mbalula and Ramaphosa, which is absolutely wrong. It can be that when the ANC, and with regard to the KZN, I understand it. They have done dismally wrong and poor, and then actually even before, prior to elections, their preparations, KZN ANC was disorganized, fighting amongst themselves. That one I understand. But when coming to Gauteng, I think they are only targeting Panyaza because he seems to be the one actually who have a potential of transcending into a senior position of the ANC. But if the ANC made that mistake of dissolving Gauteng in particular, I think Bazabai was a because people of Gauteng, in particular the ANC, fully support of Panyaza because Panyaza is the only hope for now.
Gotcha.
We need to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't want to lie, Mguni.
Yeah.
I was happy when Ramaphosa takes over, but people need to be honest, especially black people.
Gotcha.
Ramaphosa is not leading this country the right way.
All right,
He's
let's
not
leave it
giving us really, please. Thanks very much.
All right, Mvuyisa in Peter Maritzburg there. Let me take a call from Pat in Katlehong. Good morning to you, Pat. You want to talk about universities and the spaces available or otherwise?
Thulasizwe, since Mzwandile Masina took over as the mayor of Ekurhuleni, he promised the residents of Ekurhuleni a new university. And now, seemingly that university hasn't even started. I'm worried that, we are not proactive actually. Now the poor children have to suffer in order to be accommodated universities, So I don't know why we are not proactive when we do things ready. And I don't know, I think when you start a university, they can even use the old school and set up that university while they are preparing the new university. I think time is overdue for Ekurhuleni to have a new university.
Yeah, no, I got you. Thank you for that, Pat. And I do, in Mzwandile Masina's defense, I think he was perhaps echoing a promise that had been made. I can't remember, was it a State of the Nation address? But there was something to that effect, that there would be a new, I think, University of Technology. I'm a bit fuzzy on the details, but I do remember that undertaking being made at a national level.
Good morning, Thulasizwe and your team. This is Sakile Tsugwin from Kamhlabi Lingana. Thulasizwe, the incumbent Amazulu King should have integrated his father's advisory committee to guide him on issues that he doesn't have experience in to avoid these upheavals. Thank you.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Itala has failed to meet the deadline and comply with the law. It must close shop. For those people who have banked with Itala, they must get their refunds. I'm not too sure about the properties that were owned by Itala, but I can see the factories in Ladysmith are in a dilapidating state at Ezakeni Industrial Estate. So Itala must go. Thank you very much, Anonymous and Lady Smith.
Yeah, thank you for that, Anonymous. Let's leave it there. And I do need to reiterate that the National Treasury has indicated that they will be guaranteeing the deposits of depositors in that Itala situation as that whole court process and the application for liquidation does play itself out. So that's always important to emphasize. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point with Kathy Mohlahlana is up next here on SAFM after the news. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today and SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, South Africa aims to position itself as an attractive investment destination and Israel frees 90 Palestinian prisoners. Good morning. South Africa goes to the 2025 World Economic Forum as president of the G20 with the aim to position the country as an attractive investment destination. Leaders from government, civil society and business will gather in Davos, Switzerland this week for the 2025 World Economic Forum. President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead the South African delegation for the first time in many years. First Rand CEO Mary Vilakazi forms part of the delegation and says the country is on a firmer footing.
Investors say to us they are encouraged about democracy, progression, encouraged about what the government has announced around the country. But for them, they've been bitten a few times because South Africa has previously not executed. So the sentiment has generally been that investments will flow into South Africa once they see more concrete delivery on the action plans that have been articulated. So what is really very good about the session that we've just had is that I think there are clear markers that we can communicate back.
International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says although there's a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, South Africa's case before the International Court of Justice will remain. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu implemented the ceasefire yesterday, with Hamas releasing the 3 Israeli female hostages who are said to be in good health. Lamola explains that the case before the ICJ was a call for a ceasefire but also for an investigation into the plausibility of genocide that occurred during the 15-month war.
The reason we went to court was to request for a ceasefire, was also some of the provisional measures related to an investigation on the plausibility of a genocide, and the court found that indeed there is plausible genocide, which remains on the table as you are aware, but we have not yet reached a stage where we can conclude that the case on the merits must be withdrawn, because as you are aware, on the merits of the case, the plausible genocide has already been committed in the last 15 months, so there must still be justice.
90 Palestinians have been released from Israel's Ofer prison in the occupied West Bank under the Gaza ceasefire deal. 2 buses with tinted windows left the facility and was later surrounded by